Boom, and we're live. How are you, Colin?
I'm all right. How are you?
What's going on?
A lot.
You got a lot of stuff happening, man.
Yeah. First of all, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
This is amazing.
Well, Dave Rubin recommends you. I listen to Dave Rubin's. I don't listen to a whole lot of people's recommendations, but Dave Rubin's one of them.
He's been an amazing figure in my life just in the last less than even a month. He's kind of was like my savior when like everyone was, kicking me while I was down. He was the one that kind of reached a hand out, and so I owe him a great deal.
Well, we should kind of explain what kicking you while you're down means, because it's more silly to me than anything, because it doesn't really make sense. But you tweeted a joke, and it's a real simple joke. Jamie, see if you can pull up the joke. This is what happened. Colin tweeted a joke about a day without a woman, and everybody knows that a day without a woman was like that day without a Mexican thing, where you were supposed to imagine if there were no women. Well, if there were no women, first of all, there'd be no fucking people. So yeah.
Yes.
Women are super important.
Of course.
So you just write this tweet joke, peace and quiet, hashtag a day without a woman. I would laugh. I would think it was funny, and I would move on, and that's it. So then, hold on a second. Put that. Look. Go above that. Above it. Look at that. Sent this tweet which was roundly condemned as sexist.
Yeah, not really true if you leave the gaming industry, but roundly condemned in the gaming industry for sure. Outside of that, people, I think normal, everyday people that don't have an axe to grind about literally everything, found it, read it, maybe groaned or maybe laughed, and then kept going about their day like a normal person.
You're not allowed to have any personality anymore.
No.
If you work for any kind of a company that is in any way public, where you can be targeted, where they can say, oh, that's the fucking guy, go get him. Like anything that's remotely controversial. I mean, that is really remotely controversial. It's just Al Bundy.
Yeah, I mean, it's not even a good joke. And I heard you and Jim Norton talking about it. By the way, that video, that someone clipped that out and put it up on some YouTube channel. That video is like going to be a relic in my family forever. Everyone was like, I can't believe this. What is going on? This is so great. So I really do appreciate you, stepping up. And when I got your DM, by the way, on Twitter, I was like, what an amazing turn of events this has been for me. So I really am appreciative of you. Again, I just want you to know that.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Stop saying it. You're making me uncomfortable.
Oh, sorry. but at the same time, I was in bed with my girlfriend actually when I wrote it, and I had showed it to her, and I was like, this is kind of funny, right? It's kind of stupid. And she laughed. She's an ER nurse, and she works the overnight shift, so she was just getting into bed as I was getting up. And she's like, yeah, it was funny. Then we didn't really think twice about it. I sent it. I got in the shower. I went about my day. And then when I got to work, I realized that it was a much bigger deal than I had thought. And it was, and then everything fell apart and then was rebuilt very quickly. So.
Well, you resigned from the company that you worked for.
Yeah, I founded it. I co-founded the company.
Yeah.
I owned a piece of it.
And you resigned because of that.
Yeah. Other reasons too, but I mean, that was definitely the straw that broke the camel's back for me. Yeah.
What in the fuck, man?
Yeah, it was just, I felt like, yeah.
How is it possible that in this day and age, that simple tweet, by the way, if you reverse the sexes in that tweet, there's not a single man that would complain. And if he did, he's not a man.
Yeah, I agree. And I say also that if a person that wasn't a self-described like moderate conservative or libertarian sent that joke, it also wouldn't have, gotten the firestorm. That's the thing, Joe,
But you don't think a liberal man wouldn't have gotten a rash of shit and been sort of
I think in this
kicked out of the community?
Maybe in a different place, but not in the gaming industry, which is almost completely hyper liberal. So right. I've had a target on my back for years, and that's, I think, kind of the point that's lost on some people, is that this was just an opportunity. No one was offended by this joke. No one was aghast. Like I said on Ruben, and the second time I was on there, I said, like, no one was crying in their shower, losing sleep, tossing and turning over this joke.
Maybe someone was.
Well, I hope so, because we should find that person.
Find that person and study them in a lab.
But to me, I was like, no, this is, I mean, it was clear a few hours later when I finally realized what was happening. I'm like, they're in for the kill now. They found their way to get me. And
so why do you think they wanted to, quote unquote, get you?
Because, I live in San Francisco. I've lived there for 10 years. I was born and raised on Long Island, but I went to college in Boston, and then I moved to San Francisco. And it is as cartoonishly liberal as everyone thinks it is. So and the gaming industry is there. The gaming media, the people that write about games and cover them and do all that kind of stuff, they're largely there. And it's a huge echo chamber. They don't like when people penetrate the echo chamber. And I made a name for myself in the industry over years. I was the senior editor of the biggest gaming website in the world for years.
What website was that?
IGN.com. And I was the senior editor there. And I made a name for myself not only with criticism and with long form pieces, but basically I was writing pieces about political correctness in 2011 and 2012. People going after game developers, people going after all these things, and me kind of standing up and saying, "This isn't okay." This character assassination. A good example for everyone out there that doesn't know games. There's this game called Borderlands 2. One of the developers was giving an interview about it. He, and this was back in, I think, 2011. He said something to the nature of, this particular mode in the game is accessible for everyone. It's like a girlfriend mode if you want your girlfriend to come play. This was like he said he insinuated that women can't play games and don't know how to play games or whatever by using the term girlfriend mode. And people went after this guy and tried to get him, And I wrote this piece saying, like, what the hell is everyone doing? This guy just is trying to explain something. He's not a sexist. Why do you make these assumptions based on this one thing about him? And why do you want to ruin someone? And that's the whole thing. They want to ruin people. So I was outspoken about this, and I was outspoken for my support of Mitt Romney, and I was outspoken about my support for Gary Johnson, and my outspoken. So they don't like that. They don't like that stuff, and I think that's pretty clear now.
So you feel like there's a sort of a reinforced type of thinking, like a very liberal, reinforced type of thinking that you must subscribe to if you want to be a part of this.
Yes, it's an orthodoxy. It's a complete and utter orthodoxy, and it's what's so kind of nice about this, like the unintended consequence that I think is the silver lining of the dark cloud, is people from the outside now saw firsthand, like, what I had been saying for a long time, which was like, I was kind of on the fringe. I was kind of being pushed out, and I got literally thousands of people tweeting at me and Facebook messaging me and doing everything, being like, wow, this is fucking crazy. These people really are out to get you based on that. You would think I said some horrible, just offensive, just truly awful thing.
Do you think they're really out to get you, or do you think they're capitalizing on a moment where they feel like you have a target on you? And they're like, kick him, he's down. We got him. And but this reaction culture that we have, like this overreaction culture that we find ourselves in today, it really does seem to foster that kind of behavior, that people really like it when someone gets caught doing something, or when someone says something inappropriate, when you can just point the finger and then everybody can pile on.
Yeah, I think, well, let me put it a different way, because I think you're probably right in the sense that I never gained the benefit of the doubt with this group. Let's put it that way, right? So it was one thing. It was just the one thing. The domino was tipped, and they were down. As opposed to, that's why I brought up the example before of if one of the people that they actually liked within that insular industry said the same thing, they might have been aghast, but they might have reached a handout or given that person a second chance. So I think that all plays into the, I have the Gadsden flag as my Twitter icon. I've had that since 2009. I have, I've not been shy.
The Gadsden flag being "Don't tread on me, the snake."
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
So there are just certain things that made me very different than other people in the industry, and I definitely think that plays a huge role.
Well, your Twitter name is No Taxation.
Yep, which is a reference to the American Revolution, which I know A lot of people think, well, no taxes. I'm like, that's not what it means. I can't fit no taxation without representation on Twitter. That's why it doesn't say that.
Yeah, that would be a long ass.
Yeah, and unnecessarily long.
You'd have no room for tweets, but it would make you very economical with your words.
Yes, that's what I love about Twitter. You probably feel the same way. I write something really long sometimes, and then I have to parse it and figure out how to make it fit, and it feels so good.
It's very good for joke writing. Like for the skill of joke writing, to make things more concise. Like I always tell people that I think the greatest joke writer or the greatest comedian is Joey Diaz, because he gives you the most amount of visuals and impact with the least amount of words. It's just ba 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 ba. He knows how to like sink it in really quickly, and Twitter's like a good tool for that. But not if that's a little ridiculous. That's because you only back. I don't know if that's the case how it is now, but well, actually, it definitely is, right? Like if I write to you. If I reply to you, your name takes up a big chunk of what I tweet to you. But what you tweet doesn't take up. So it's like the 140 characters would be limiting people that respond to you rather than you tweeting.
Yeah, exactly. And the beauty is, too, as you've probably noticed, is that I think in the last year or whatever, images used to take up characters, too, and videos and links. And I think the links are the only thing left that takes up the extra characters in addition to the name. But it keeps everyone curt. But that doesn't stop people from tweeting 7,000 times in a row anyway.
Oh, and put numbers on them. I've done it too.
Yeah, no, I did it just yesterday when I ran into some woman in San Francisco that I was walking my dog. I have a Boston Terrier. She was like a little sick. Her poop was a little wet, so I went and picked it up, and I left like some, just like smear. You'd have to use your fingernails to get off the ground. Some woman came out of her apartment and started scolding me. Like she was waiting by the window to scold me for this, and I like what the hell is going on? So I had to tweet out a few tweets about that just for posterity.
Yeah, the Twitter thing is very weird, but here's something that I really don't like, and I'm glad I don't see much of it anymore, is that twit longer shit. Hey, That's a loophole.
Yeah, yeah. We
Don't do that. Don't do that. Ralphie May used to do that shit all the time. He used to read his tweets. I'm like, what the fuck, Ralphie? Why are you writing paragraphs here? You know what's going on.
Yeah, some people, I've done it too. Will like go in Photoshop, make a paragraph of a text, and then make that the image. People do that on Instagram too.
Yeah, I've done that before. I've written things down and then taken a photo. I said I was going to do that for a while. That I think that Twitter is just too impersonal. I'm going to write all my stuff out and then take a picture of it. But I was just fucking around.
I think if that's the if it's the exception, I think it's totally fine. I don't want people ruining Twitter. I like the curtness.
Yeah, it's good. It's good format, but it also makes it extremely easy for people to do what happened to you.
Yeah, exactly. Because their nuance is lost, right?
Yeah, nuance is lost.
Yep.
Well, it's always lost in text. I mean, in writing, it's very difficult. I mean, even if you're reading a book, sometimes you have to go over the previous paragraphs to figure out exactly how this guy was setting this up. But I think what's happening, what you're saying, I see. There's two parts of me. Like one, the example that you gave before about the guy saying that it's like girlfriend mode. If he just said, it's like, say if your girlfriend doesn't play video games and she wants a really easily accessible, you could do it that way. But people probably would attack him even for that. Yeah, they would say, "What are you implying that girls don't play video games?"
Well, that's it's always the implication, right? Like everyone's always out to assume the absolute worst, and that's what I was trying to write about. I'm like, this guy is just trying to make an example. He's probably given 15 PR interviews today. He's probably exhausted. He's also a developer, so he doesn't have much PR training.
Right.
He's trying to just get the point across. Why do you have to assume the man is a sexist and a misogynist because of this one thing? It's I'm willing to die on that hill because I feel like people deserve the benefit of the doubt. People deserve to make a mistake or get a joke wrong or, all those kinds of things. And I feel like, yes, people are allowed to exercise their free speech on the other end and be like, I don't like that joke or I don't like this or I don't like that. But it doesn't stop there. With what's going on with Dave Chappelle this week, I thought it was really actually interesting with his 2 specials on Netflix. Mm-hmm. People are freaking out about his jokes, his jokes about gay people or transgender people or whatever.
Well, he's comparing transgender people to black people, and and saying that it's a ridiculous comparison.
Right, like I actually, after I saw all the stuff, I went and watched the first one, and then I watched half of the second one, and I was falling asleep, so I didn't want to watch it anymore. But I was like, this is funny, and Anthony Jeselnik or Daniel Tosh would make these people shit their pants compared to what's going on with this kind of stuff. And it's always this drama that seeks to kind of, it doesn't stop at saying like, I don't like it. It's often insinuated or outright spoken that they want to censor it or change it. That's like where because I was reading a piece specifically about Chappelle where they're like, this calls up questions as to why, like, how far should comedy go? And I'm like, no, that doesn't call. And that's when the free speech argument ends for me. That's when I'm like, you're actually now talking about changing it.
Well, it doesn't work. It doesn't work with us. With comics, it just doesn't work. We're not going to do it. It's too many people like it. I understand what they're trying to do because when they live in that world of cubicles and human resources and very restricted patterns of behavior that you have to follow if you live in an office environment and work in an office environment rather, there's a lot of people out there that are boxed into these terrible situations where you have to pretend to be this thing that you're not. And you don't have any personality. You're not allowed to say anything ridiculous or silly. And when you have that kind of environment and you see someone who's free, like Dave Chappelle, you want to stop it. And if you can point something out that can, oh, look, he's saying something that's inappropriate. He's saying something I don't agree with. He's saying something. Let's get him. Let's go get him. And then also, in defense of the writers that are writing these articles, look, they're in a bizarre environment where they have to fucking constantly defend like their position. They have to constantly get clicks. They have to constantly get hits. They can't just put an article out and nobody reads it. They'll lose their job. So they have to write about something that's inflammatory, write about something that's salacious, something that's going to get people excited. I mean, that guy that wrote that thing about you for the International Business Times, I looked into that International Business Times, and one of the things about it is that there was I think it was a Mother Jones article about that website where they were told like that the people who write articles were given some ridiculous task, like they have to get 10,000 hits per article they write.
Right.
So that might have, for people who don't know, there was a guy who wrote an article about Colin where it said, Kind of Funny's Colin Moriarty resigns after writing a racist joke that targeted women. It wasn't racist even remotely in the slightest. But when you take into account the environment that these people are forced to work in, and you say, well, this guy literally is forced to write something that's more fucked up than it really is. So you have to get people excited about this in a way that's going to get them to click on it and hopefully get him to his 10,000 hit quota. If that is true, I feel for him in a way. I think he's working for a shitty business, you know?
Right. But it's the same way I feel. I mean, I actually, I came from the editorial world where you have to get I mean, our expectations were way higher, and
did you have those kind of requirements?
No, not literally. I know some sites do, but
some sites have like a quota.
Yeah, like a quota, or like you get bonuses if you get a certain amount of hits or whatever.
Oh.
We didn't have that. We were salaried or whatever. But you would be fired ultimately if you weren't writing things that people were reading.
Right.
But I tried to stay out of my way for writing inflammatory things. Actually, there are a couple of examples where I wouldn't write a story because I felt like it wasn't pertinent to any information, and it was specifically to assassinate someone's character.
All right, well, we found a
them.
problem here. You have fucking morals, dude.
Yeah,
there's the door.
Yeah, like
no room in this business.
I had a high profile woman in the gaming industry tell me in an interview that was unrelated to what I was actually interviewing her, that she never was once the victim of sexism in the industry ever, and I was like, I could write this, but this isn't why I was there. I wasn't interviewing her about this,
right.
And this is going to cause her problems, and that's not who I am. I don't.
Why would that cause her problems?
Because then people are gonna jump on and be like, well, I experienced this and I experienced this, and you're diminishing, and it would just cause her drama. I'm like, why would I do that to her?
Right,
like,
but it's not. See, this is where it drives me crazy. That's a beautiful example of people being cool. If she can say, hey, I've never experienced any sexism in this business, and you'd be like, wow, the gaming industry must be really cool. And this woman has managed to get through the maze with a bunch of high fives and people appreciating her work. Wouldn't that be celebrated?
Not in the gaming industry.
But do you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
Why does that have to be, in some ways, a target? Like, why is that story a target? Like, wouldn't you assume that if there is a person who can reach a high level of prominence in this very complicated business, right? I mean, the gaming industry is incredibly complicated, especially how weighted everything is when it comes to male versus female stuff. That whole Gamergate shit exposed so much of that, which was really confusing to people on the outside, especially people like me who don't play games.
Right.
I was like, what in the fuck is
confusing
going
to me,
on with these gamer people?
Yeah, it's confusing to me too. I mean, the second story I think was more pertinent though, which was this guy worked at a big publisher. He was laid off, and he had like this huge meltdown on social media, and people were writing about it. And I was like, I knew him personally, and wasn't really friendly with him at the time, but I knew him personally, and I was like, and everyone was like, we should write about this, and I'm like, what is this serving? Like,
what was the meltdown?
He was just going off about how he was just angry and sad. He's a young kid that finally got in, and then he lost his grip on the job and was laid off, whatever. And he's fine now. He's back in the industry. But I was like, I think I wasn't cut out to be like this hardcore, like, go get him journalism, like at any cost. Because I was like, this is going to ruin this. Like, why would I want to contribute to this? I didn't get into this industry to pile on people, to ruin their lives. I got into this industry to celebrate video games, to tell interesting stories about games, to challenge people's minds. And I always tried to take that with me, where I was like, I'm not going to write anything for the clicks. Mm-hmm. I could write these, like you said, salacious headlines. I can write this dirt or this stuff I heard, whatever. But that's not who I am. That's not who I want to be. And I'd rather contribute more positively to the ecosystem than be like, well, I'll just get clicks for this today, and this guy's got to read the story, and it's going to be in Google and LexisNexis forever, and it's going to, for what? So I can get 50,000 clicks one day and then just move on? He's not going to be able to move on. He didn't even do anything that is worthy of me writing about this. Why are we always after people?
Well, your mindset is noble. I mean, it is a great way to look at things. It's weird that it's so unusual, and that most people would be more self-serving and would choose the path that's going to get them the most clicks. And hey, if I got to fucking crack a few eggs to make an omelet, that's how it goes.
Yeah, and that's not because I never wanted the cannon to be turned on me, even though it was eventually. You know what I mean?
The cannon of hate.
Like try to put out that energy that you want. That's positive, or at least constructive. If someone like murders someone in the gaming industry, yes, that's noteworthy. We should probably write about that. If someone,
it depends on who they murdered, right?
Well, what do you mean?
Well, someone's a terrible person, they murdered them, like Punisher style.
Well, that's different, I guess. We can have that conversation, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, man. I agree with you. It's again, it's noble. What your mindset, your philosophy is very noble, and I wish more people shared it. And I think that when there's all these people scrambling around like we're seeing now, trying to find their niche and trying to get attention, and you find more of that kind of predatory behavior.
Yeah, I agree. And well, that brings me back, Joe, to what we were saying specifically about, well, you feel bad for these writers at these sites. And to me, like the analogy I draw is like, I hate the TSA, right? There's normal people that work for the TSA that are just trying to do their thing. But that doesn't mean I don't hate the system that they work under and think the system should change. And it's the same thing here. It's like these guys are victimized by the set of circumstances under which they have to write. But that doesn't mean that the system should remain the same because they need to write those stories.
Well, let's talk about the TSA.
Okay.
Because I know more about that than I know about business.
Sure.
About your business, rather.
Sure.
Like, what do you hate about the TSA?
They're infringing on your Fourth Amendment rights. They're warrantless searches. They illegally seize things. I mean, this is written very clearly in the Bill of Rights. So, and I hate the whole argument of like, well, you don't have, or you kind of pass by your rights or give them up when you're in the airport. And I'm like, no, they're inalienable actually. So I just have a huge problem. Like, I don't have a problem going through a metal detector, something reasonable, a reasonable search.
Yeah.
Like.
Well, it's kind of reasonable because there are carbon fiber blades and all these different plastic blades that they can make now that you could really fuck somebody up that are not going to show up in a metal detector.
Sure, but it goes back to first of all, I don't think that we're going to have many problems on airplanes anymore. I think that they're moving on to something else. And no plane is going to get hijacked anymore now that everyone knows what's going to happen.
But dude, as soon as you think like that, that's when something happens.
That could be a legitimate argument. I also want to give a shout out that serious things happen. My dad's a retired New York City firefighter, so that hit very close. I knew people that died that day, but it's still and my dad could have died that day depending on the circumstances. Thank God he didn't. But to me, it was like it's like the old Benjamin Franklin thing. It's balancing your liberty and your freedom with security. And,
right.
And I think that we've given them so much power with the Patriot Act, with the TSA, with all these things. Where I'm like, this is a bad road to go down, and they're just going to take more and more. So
yeah, what is the Benjamin Franklin quote? He who values safety over
liberty deserves neither safety nor liberty.
Yeah. I think the TSA has a ridiculously hard job, and I think the requirements that people have. What people request of them to make sure that they are safe, and then you give them $10 an hour or whatever the fuck they make. They don't make much, And
no, of course.
What you get is a bunch of underqualified people who are tired, and they're tired of working like the constant flow. If you watch how I like to study people at the airport, because I feel like it's one of the rare times where you could just stare at people while they're doing their job and no one gets weird with you because everybody's staring at that guy or that girl that's taking your license and scanning your ticket and all that jazz. So I just stare at them and I watch how they interact with all these people, and people are fucking tired. That's what I see. I see frustration. I see so many people in these lines, and I see people just being exhausted. And then the people that have to deal with the people that don't take their shoes off. Sorry, you have to take your shoes off. Why do I have to take my shoes off? Take your fucking shoes off, man. You see that kind of thinking,
right?
Where they're on the edge all the time. So you're not dealing with someone. Well, sir, you have to take your shoes off because it's going through this thing. It's not like he has one guy he's dealing with in the whole day. He's dealing with this constant river of human beings that are coming through, and some of them have water bottles, and you got to make sure those dangerous water bottles don't get on the plane. There's a lot of stupid shit that goes with the TSA, but how the fuck else are you going to keep people from bringing shoe bombs or knives on planes? And it's really hard to do. No,
it is. I mean, I don't think that the counterpoint would be to just get rid of it, to just walk into a terminal and be able to get on an airplane. But I remember, and you remember too, and a lot of people do, we had a security apparatus before 9/11. These guys outsmarted the security apparatus by doing very specific things, including like knowing how to fly planes and doing all the things that you can't possibly check for. And also, people get guns and knives and weapons intentionally through the TSA all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I think, wasn't it something like over 90% of like agents that were trying to get through things through the TSA succeeded? So these are the people standing in between us and ISIS.
Yeah,
it's like
people do it accidentally all the time. They have stuff in their bag and it gets through, and then they go, "What the fuck?" It happens all the time.
Yeah, I knew a guy that brought a ton of weed overseas on accident.
Oh,
like
that's terrifering. That scares the shit out of me.
Me too. Like I go through my bed just for anything you might leave in there in your bags. Or I always comb through just to make sure there's not. You never know what's going to happen. But to the point, he didn't mean to do that.
Right.
But it was there. It was.
Right.
So.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not a perfect system, and it's not going to be, and that's just the way it is. It would be nice if it was more efficient. It would be nice if people got paid better. It'd be nice if it was easier and quicker. There'd be a lot of it would be nice. But I don't know of anybody that's come up with a better system for scanning people and making sure that they don't bring guns or bombs or whatever the fuck it is on an airplane. It's just bizarre that airplanes are the one place where we have so much fucking security, where malls, which are filled with way more people than your average plane. There's something about terror and flying where it's already terrifying. Like, yeah, you think you're scared now, bitch? What if it blows up in the fucking sky? A dude pulls a fucking turban out of his bag and wraps it around his head and starts lighting his underwear on fire. You know, that's what we're scared of. We're scared of someone taking it to the next level because people are already tense. Yeah. Because you're in a metal tube hurling through the sky at 500 miles an hour. If it blows up while you're doing that, it's even more freaky.
Oh my God, it's horrifying.
But isn't that weird?
It's terrifying.
But like, it's kind of strange. Whereas, like, that seems to be, like, the preferred method of terror, like, that we're really worried about, which is why the TSA exists in the first place. Right. Because the volume of humans that go through a lot of places is probably commensurate with the volume of humans that go through the airport.
Oh, sure.
But you don't have a single place that you could mention that's as strict with what you carry around as the airport. You could walk into the fucking mall with a loaded gun any day of the week. Any day of the week. Every single time I walk on the mall, I am just never checked. Nobody frisks me. I don't go through any metal detectors. You could walk in armed to the fucking teeth. And who's going to stop you? The mall security guard? The fuck out of here.
In his little his SUV.
Yeah, like during Christmas time, there are thousands of people at the mall. Thousands and thousands.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's more like the Israeli experience where like this kind of shit can happen at any time, anywhere. Right. And they're very vigilant about that. I've often wondered that as well. Like, why doesn't, even at a security checkpoint in an airport, why not just do it there?
Yes.
And I really think it's that they, you know, to your point with the mall and all these kinds of things and these public places, I think it just speaks to the fact that most people, a vast majority of people, are just good, decent people that want to go about their lives.
For sure.
And that these terrorists could target all of these different places. I don't think they do, maybe because they can't, but probably more because they don't want to give themselves away for something that might be seen as minor. Yeah. Like 9/11 was a spectacle. It wasn't only that 3,000 some odd people died. It was the spectacle of killing those people in that way. Of course. And so I think that there's something about that as well, which is why I'm more scared about like a dirty bomb or something like that today than I am of anyone taking an airplane over, because everyone knows what happened in 2001. So now if someone pulls out a knife on an airplane and someone's just going to tackle that guy and probably kill him. Right?
Oh yeah,
you know. So that's why I'm not
sure.
That's why. And the guy, I know the guy tried to blow his shoe up or something like that on the plane. That's why we have to take our fucking shoes off now. But to me, I'm like, the threat has changed. The threat is evolving, and we can be vigilant in all these ways. But then I wonder, it goes back to like NSA and all these things. Like, how much are we going to give the government, and how much are we going to give up in order for safety? I'd rather live in a more dangerous world, personally, and know that no one's reading my text messages or no one's throwing out my hand lotion. You know, or harassing. I saw these two women, Australian women, in the airport at SFO when I came down to LA last week. They were in wheelchairs. They were going through all of their stuff and I'm like, what the fuck are you doing to these people? Like, just leave them alone. And I actually went up to them afterwards and I'm like, I'm sorry, we hate these people too, just so you know. So this is not okay with any of us. That they were there for like a half an hour. They had these frowns on their faces. They looked dejected. This might be their first time in the States for all I know. Or
good, keep them out. Here's what happens: you come over here, we'll check your shit, take your pants off. What do you got in there? It's like, what are you packing? They're harassing old women. They're harassing, right. Harassing. I think I saw in JFK once, like they're going through like a nun's bag or something. I'm like, what? This is madness to me. I'm like, this is not. Yeah, but everyone's turning on each other. But it's not, because if they didn't go through everyone thoroughly and we're going to let nuns go through, and then what happens? Someone goes in, dresses a nun, and they act as a terrorist. They are a terrorist. I like someone. I don't know much about it. You probably know more about it than I do. But someone was telling me a little bit about the way the Israelis do airport security, specifically that it's like all about they're not profiling, but even based on race or anything. They're profiling based on like your behavior, and it goes to your point. Like, these are well-paid professional people that know what the fuck they're doing, know what they're looking for, and they're in the airport and they see someone just acting a little weird. Well, and they also do some crazy shit. Like, I had a friend who went there and she took photos of some anti-Semitic pictures, some like Nazi swastikas on something. So you know what the Israeli guys did at the airport? They shot her computer and they gave it back to her. Really? Yes. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So there's that. That's a little over the top. Yeah. So that's a little over the top. So there's that. A little more balanced than that, yeah, I would like to bring. They said, can we see your computer? And they opened up her computer. The terrible Israeli accent. I didn't even know where to go with it there. They just put a fucking hole. She heard tunk, tunk. and they gave her back her fucking computer.
That's
half hour later.
That's a little too strong arm for me. But to the point, like, I don't know what this. I just don't like the security theater aspect of it. We all know what's going on. Everyone's being inconvenienced. These people are miserable. We're miserable. It's just, it goes back down to no one wants to make hard decisions or even do like really hard work. Like, what works, what doesn't? Let's do studies. Let's figure out what we're doing instead of looking at people naked in machines. And
well, you also have to take you don't really see anyone naked in machines anymore. That's not real.
I know, but back in the day.
But even back in the day, it was just like, come on, man. What are you worried about? What are we worried about? People are so silly. You're worried about people seeing naked. But the thing that gets to me, though, is like, how can you make it safer? No one has offered up any sort of alternative to the TSA that makes any sense to me. I've heard people say the TSA is incompetent. I fucking hate them. Violation of the Fourth Amendment. But there's no alternatives that I've seen that they're even remotely responsible.
No, I mean, I think it goes back to me of like, I can't speak necessarily to the level of incompetence because I'm not in security. I don't know like what they're specifically doing. I don't know what their level of training is. It just goes back to the constitutionality of it. Like if we and it brings up those tough questions. It's the same way I feel about the Second Amendment. If we start seeding what this means in certain situations, then before you know it, they'll just continue to erode it away. Yeah. So when I'm like, this is a warrantless search. This is by definition a warrantless search. If you went and got John Jay and James Madison and all these guys and asked them and somehow told them what the fuck was going on and then said like, does this look like this is...
But you would have to go and get them and then go, okay, this is ISIS and this is the internet and then this is Twitter and this is how they send information through pictures with metadata. It's encoded in the picture and you have to break it down and that's where the message is. Like, they'd be like, oh, yeah, search everybody. Oh, my God, you live in a terrible place.
They'd be like, I got to go to bed and really process this.
Yeah, like, back in the day when we only had muskets, it was so awesome.
I don't know if my argument makes sense to you, but to me, I just feel like these are certain sacred rights that need to be protected in any way they can. And if we want to have a conversation about, like, why we should cede this right in a specific way, then you have to do it a little more clearly. And to me, I think people take some of these things for granted that, what's stopping them from, if these rights continue to erode, then what stops them from busting into your house at some point and be like, well...
Well, they can do that, and there are some search and seizure methods that they're really being criticized for lately, in particular, for these for drug offenses, where they don't even knock, they just break open people's doors and wind up shooting their dogs all the time, shoot people all the time. I mean, there was an article written recently about the amount of people that are wounded in unnecessary, like, how do they describe that kind of altercation between the cops? No knock, no searchless warrants, or what is it? I think they just call it no knock break-ins or something like that. I don't know how they describe it, but if you've seen the way the DEA treats any sort of a situation, even when they just have marijuana, they'll kick down the door. If they see a dog, they shoot it. And then they make people huddle up in the corner after they just murdered your family pet. And oftentimes they find like a pipe. There's many people that have been called on, like, someone has turned them in or someone has said something about them that turned out to not be true. Like, hey, these people have a grow op in their business, or in their house rather. And one of them was a former FBI, a couple that both worked in the FBI. They kicked in their fucking door, held them at gunpoint, the whole deal, went to the basement. They were growing tomatoes. And they were like, what in the fuck? These are retired FBI officers, and the DEA broke down their door and pointed a loaded gun in their face. And then found plants that you can eat. You
can eat weed too, as you know.
You can. It's actually not bad for you.
So these things are happening. Actually, that one thing sounds familiar with the family pet being killed. I think I saw a video on that on YouTube.
There's a lot of it. It's not just one thing, man. One of them was a mayor, and God damn it, was it Washington? Where was it? There was a mayor who it turned out that the post office, someone in the post office was running a scam. And what they were doing was they were having weed sent to other people's addresses. And they were sending it through the post office. And the postman would intercept the package because he was the guy who delivered that address. Oh, okay. So he would get that package and somehow or another it got intercepted before it got to the postman. And then they had a dummy postman come and bring it and then do the whole break down the door, shoot the dog thing. They chased the dog, a golden lab, chased him out in the yard. The dog ran, and was running and hiding, and they shot him in front of everybody. And it turned out that the guy who was the victim of this and his family, who were held at gunpoint and zip tied, it was a mayor. And so, he was like, what in the fuck are you people doing? Like, what is this? You just killed my dog in front of my kids. You
That's
traumatized my family.
Yeah, it's awful. But you're making the argument, in my opinion, of why we have to take a stand. Like why we have to say like
in
this
is in that situation, yes.
Yeah, but just
that's not TSA though.
No, but it is a Fourth Amendment issue that that are allowed to be eroding. No one should be allowed to go into anyone's home without a warrant, no matter what.
But don't you think that you sort of imply at least a certain amount of consent when you get in that line and give them your bag and say, "Here, search this." Like no one's telling you that you have to do that.
Sure.
Like you could choose to fly with no baggage at all. You could choose if you wanted to send your stuff through the mail, and it would probably cost the same amount as it would to pay that $50 or whatever it is with Southwest. If you wanted to send your package through the mail, you could do it that way and just walk through with nothing on you.
Sure, you could do that. Yeah, and you would still have to go through the machines and all that. I don't dispute that because I agree with you in the pre 9/11 world. Going through the metal detector, having your bags, looking at it through the machine. I think that that's all reasonable. I just don't like the people being pulled aside, pulled into rooms, people just going kind of very disrespectfully going through shit. And I don't know. To me, I just is that a hill worth dying on? In a way, it is because I feel like it could just, as you made the point, it's already. See that mentality now seeps into lots of different places,
right?
And I just don't want to see I don't want to see the end result of that.
That mentality is also the justification for the NSA being able to look at your text messages or being able to look at your emails, and that's the big thing that was exposed by Edward Snowden that really pissed me off. That so many people were so flippant about. They were like, "Hey, if you're not doing anything wrong, don't worry about it." Like that is wrong. You can't say that because you can't look at everyone. You can't just randomly look at everyone and look at their private information. You just can't do that because the people that are looking at that are just people. And that's the problem with the TSA. It's not even necessarily the issue being that you get to search people's stuff to make sure there's no terrorists and no people bringing weapons on planes. It's who gets to do that? Who are these people? Are these people experts? Are these people security experts? Do they work for the Mossad? Right. Are they CIA agents? Are they FBI? Are they who's looking? Who are these people? Are they competent? Why are they doing? When you go to the airport, man, what you see is a bunch of people. And I used to do a joke about this. That I think that how do I phrase this, making it sound less insulting than it used to be. That was an old joke. But the idea was that I think that the people that work at Burger King at the airport and the TSA, they're the same people, and they just reach into a hat. Today I got fries. Oh, shit, I'm on bomb duty. It's literally almost like that. It's like you see people that are just taking whatever job they can get a hold of. I feel for them. I mean, if someone comes along and you don't have a job and they say, hey, the TSA's hiring, $15 an hour. Okay, cool. What I got to do? You got to stand here and make sure that people don't bring water bottles on a plane. All right. And then after the 50th day of people bringing water, man, take your fucking water bottle out of the bag. You know what you're doing.
Yeah, my frustration grows in that way with just people that in 2017 seem to have some, because you and I, I'm sure you do too, I fly all the time, right? So you see all types, right? And it's like you always encounter the guy, it's like, have you not flown in the last 15 years ever to know that people trying to walk through the machines with their shoes on, their belt, it's like, what all is the time. And then they're inconvenience. People that don't push their bins through the, down to the thing and just leave it there for someone else to push through. I'm like, what is going on?
And some people
are
just cunts. There was this one guy who was really kind of funny. He was going through the metal detector thing, and he had a bottle of water in his bag. And because he had a bottle of water in his bag, they had to check his bag. And so when he goes through, they set your bag aside. Your thing goes through the line. It hits the scanner, and they pull it. Bag check. So this guy was like checking his phone and looked at the bag. Like 30 seconds had gone by. And he goes, I have a flight to catch. Excuse me. I have a flight to catch. And the woman who grabbed his bag said, what are the odds? You're at an airport and you got a flight to catch? How crazy. And she goes, hey, you got a water bottle in your bag, dummy. And and everybody was laughing. It was funny because the guy was being a cunt.
Right.
And the girl just kind of called him out on it. And the way she did it was very humorous. I got a good chuckle out of it.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, you see, I always try to show, to your point about showing some respect to the TSA agents. I have my confrontations with them somewhat.
Do you? What kind of confrontations have you had?
Well, just in the sense, like, just a couple of weeks ago, I guess it was, when I came down to see Dave, I was with my girlfriend, and they were going through a bag. They held my girlfriend's bag, but they were just holding it for, like, to your point, for minutes. We weren't in a rush, but I'm like, the guy wasn't even acknowledging that, like, hey, dude, our stuff's here. Like, we're kind of just standing here waiting. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, and I said to him, like, are you enjoying your little bit of power right now? Like, I don't understand why you're doing this to us. We said please and thank you. We're doing our stuff. So just these little confrontations. I had a massive when I was still in high school, because 9/11 happened when I was in 12th grade, and I flew down to in 2002, early 2002, I flew down to Virginia to see my sister who was teaching down there, and they were going through my bags and stuff like that, and I had a confrontation with the TSA where one of them was like, "Son, do you know what happened or whatever?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I know what happened. I'm from New York. I live in New York."
Have you heard of 9/11?
And my
son?
dad's a New York City firefighter. Yeah, I understand what happened. And like to the point where like where they called over, like I was a 17-year-old kid. And to the point where they called over like some cops, and then they just let me go, whatever. But I was like, at that point, it was so in me where I'm like, why are you disrespecting me? Like, you're going through my stuff. If I'm a little upset about that, or I have something to say about that, like, I understand you have to probably deal with this all day, but don't because I'm a young kid, I don't know what happened. Because I'm a young man, you had no idea what my experience was. Were you at the funeral for a firefighter that you knew that died? I was. So like, it's that kind of stuff always, I think it sowed a seed in me very early with them where I'm like, eh. So I acknowledge that part of it too, where it's like there is a little bit of a chip on my shoulder with them.
I'm sure there is. I never have a confrontation with them. I'm always super friendly. I go through, say hi to people. I just treat it as like, this is what I'm doing now. I don't say this is a big inconvenience. I just say this is what you have to do. This is what I'm doing now. I do respect this idea that the Fourth Amendment is being violated, but I do not see a better alternative. If I did, I would think that, well, we should definitely follow that protocol, whatever the better alternative is. I just think whenever you have non-skilled labor in those sort of situations, like the guy working the fries at Burger King or the guy who's, doing that thing at the TSA, you're going to get a wide variety of people that need a job.
Right.
And some of them are just going to suck at protocol. They're going to suck at being polite. They're going to suck at recognizing that and I don't think they have any leeway either. If some old lady comes through in a wheelchair, I'm pretty sure you have to check her, just like you check everybody else. And if you don't, you probably get fired. They have cameras watching them everywhere. So it's not their fault. The organization itself, the TSA, there's a diffusion of responsibility when you're one of the people that's responsible. You're at the top, and you make these laws, and then you pass them down to the people that are supposed to enforce all these regulations that you've written down. There's almost like there's a diffusion of responsibility from the people that have created those laws. They don't have to enforce them. They're not out there doing it. So it's someone else's job. The $10 an hour guy, it's his job to go out there and do all this stuff. And so it's real easy for someone at the top who's not experiencing the day-to-day interaction with these human beings to be callous about it or to make like hard, fast rules like, hey, if someone comes through in a wheelchair, there's no leeway. You let them go. But then again, you have to think about it in their point of view. Like if someone was a terrorist and they did decide, well, here's what we do. It's been proven for a fact that they've used children as suicide bombers. So why wouldn't you use an old lady? Why wouldn't you use an old man? Why wouldn't you use someone in a wheelchair? You certainly could. So you have to follow the same protocol with everybody. Everybody that goes through has to be scanned. You can't let someone not be scanned just because they're old. Like you've reached a certain amount of years on this planet. You wouldn't do anything fucking crazy, would you, Bob? No, not me. You can't think like that, because if you do think like that, that will be your vulnerability. That will be the path in that someone who's looking to do something horrible will take.
I think that the solution, Joe, to bridge the gap in the way we feel about this and like come to some sort of consensus, what might be, and this conflicts a little bit with my small government kind of mentality, but it's just to say, like, to ask the kind of fundamental question, why are these people being paid $10 or $15 an hour? Back to the Israeli experience of these guys that are professionals. They take a lot of pride in their work. They make maybe $80,000 or $100,000 a year, and they, not that they necessarily need to make that much money, but people that are professional, should we invest more money in making this smarter?
It would be a substantial increase in our airline fees and a bunch of other things, I'm sure.
Sure.
Maybe it wouldn't.
Maybe. Well, we already pay a little bit of that, with tickets. But I think Homeland Security might be able to. Maybe we stop dropping bombs on a bunch of countries and take some of that money and put it on into that.
Dare you? What else do you suggest? No more drones? Fucking communists. Who is this guy? Yeah, the Israeli thing is interesting because Israel has a mandatory military service requirement that I am not in favor of, but I am. Part of me
feel
sees,
the same way.
I feel the benefit of it. Like it's very rare to meet people that are more patriotic than Israelis. People that are more committed to their country. It's like they feel very marginalized, very targeted, and rightly so. And so because of that, like people that I've met that work for the Israeli army or that have been soldiers over there, they have this very intense sort of view of altercation and of the world. And when you're forced to do 2 years military service, mandatory like they are, you're invested in this whole project of Israel. I mean, there's no veterans and then civilians.
Right.
Everyone's a fucking veteran. And you know, when you deal with a country where literally everyone does some military service, there's more chips in the game. You know, people are all in. It's a different scenario.
Yeah, I think, you know, I went to school with this girl that was Israeli when I was at Northeastern in Boston, and I remember very clearly she had this, very unassuming, you would never know, but she had this picture of her with an assault rifle shooting at a range, and I'm like, this is so interesting. It conflicts, because I agree with you. It's like one of those things where I'm like, I can see both sides of this, where I don't know that the state should have the right to exert that kind of power over a person. But at the same time, does it have to be military service? So when a person turns 18, is it fair to say, like, just spend a couple of years and give something to your country, and whether it's you work in a soup kitchen or something, or you do something that is for the society and really have some investment and some skin in the game in society. I think that that's a nice idea, but I think that the way I feel about the state's exertion of power over the individual kind of overrides that. But I like the idea in principle, like the idea of saying, like, hey, and it's also easy for me as a 32-year-old that would be long,
right,
you know, to be like, you guys do it. So
right.
At the same time, I understand that argument as well.
No, I think I'm completely in agreement with you. I love the idea that they're all in, but I don't want anybody enforcing that on me. And I want a kid, if a kid grows up in America and then decides, hey man, I'm gonna backpack across the country. No, you can't. You got to join the army, you fuck. I don't want that. You know, I want people to do whatever the fuck they want. Hey, I want to be a fly fishing guide in Colorado. No, you can't. You have to clean machine guns.
Right.
No, fuck that.
Yeah,
you know, I don't. I love the fact that America has so much ultimate freedom for like what you choose to do and not to do. Look, we live in this sort of experiment in self-government, and you can not participate if you want to. I like that. I like that you don't have to vote. I mean, I'm not saying that everybody should fuck off and not vote, but I am saying that I like that it's your option.
Me too. I think they have compulsory voting in Australia, I want to say.
And look how that works out. Fucking kangaroos are everywhere, dude. Crocodiles,
and spiders,
poisonous bugs and shit.
God, that place looks horrifying.
It's great. It's awesome. You ever been?
No, I've never been.
It's the best.
I've never been.
I'd live there. It's like that's number 3 on my list.
Yeah,
number 1, America. Number 2, Canada. Number 3, Australia.
That seems like a pretty reasonable list. I mean, I know
good list.
Just being in the gaming industry, I know a lot of people. Some people I really love that came from Australia, really friendly people. But the interior of that country sounds like just an absolute fucking shit show.
It's crazy, but it's also really gorgeous. It's wild. I have a good buddy who lives over there who goes into the interior all the time, and he's the one who sent me a video of a brown snake getting killed by some evil spider. A brown snake kills you like instantly, and there's some evil spider that was killing the brown snake. I'm like, what the fuck kind of a shithole do you live in, Adam? He's a madman. He's out there living in that shit.
A man like me would not be able to survive there.
This dude camps out there. He goes out into the bush and shoots buffaloes with a bow and arrow. He's a maniac. But the area of Australia is the size of the continental United States. But there's as many people as less than the amount of people that live in the greater Los Angeles area, live in the entire this whole fucking continent of Australia. It's nuts.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's like Perth on the west coast, and then it's just Sydney and Melbourne right on the east coast, and that's basically
well, it's Queensland. There's a few other places, but the bottom line is there's a giant percentage of that place where you don't want to get caught dead.
No, I wouldn't. I'm the kind of guy with like where I see a spider and I have to argue with my girlfriend who's going to kill it. So I don't want to. Do
you really?
Yeah,
you argue.
It's
always step up, bro.
It always ends up on me, but I hate spiders.
Really?
So if I see even these little, I hate them.
Do you get arachnophobia, do you think?
No, I don't think I have that. I'm not going to like, if I see one crawling at me, I'm not going to run out the house, but I'm like, I don't want, is this thing going to jump? I have to like really think about my strategy on how I'm going to kill this thing.
Wow.
You know? Yeah. It's one of those things where I'm like, nah. So if I was in Australia, I'm just being honest with you. So if I was in Australia, you
gotta be super careful in Australia.
Oh my God, dude! I see some of these things when people are outside barbecuing, even in like Melbourne or something like that.
Yeah.
And the camera pans, and it's
look, it's a brown snake.
And I'm like, holy Jesus God! I wouldn't. I don't know.
Well,
that's not for me.
The waters are filled with sharks. If you get past the sharks, they're filled with jellyfish. You get to the shore, there's poisonous spiders. You go into the hills, there's poisonous fucking snakes.
What is it about that part of the world? Like it's
ruthless.
It's unbelievable. Yeah, they have man o' war and all that kind of stuff in the water, and the
box jellyfish are the scariest.
Yeah, these things
just
are crazy.
Fucking kill you. They kill you if you fall into like some sort of a patch, or what do they call them, a school of jellyfish. If you accidentally stumble upon one, you're a dead person. You're fucked. I mean, you're dead instantly.
Yeah,
it's really crazy.
And they're little tiny guys, right?
Yeah,
Too, some of them.
And they just swarm on you and
They're hard. The jellyfish are always scary because growing up on Long Island, we had obviously harmless jellyfish, but they would wash up on the shore sometimes. And I used to look at them when I was a kid. I was like, these are so strange.
What is this, Jamie?
Oh,
It's a spider killing a brown snake.
Another one? So spiders just eat brown snakes all the time.
is it caught in its web? That's
Yep.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
That's
It is.
horrifying.
Webs are awesome.
It's horrifying.
Yeah, not to me. Snakes are cunts. I don't know whose team I'm on. I think I'm on Team Snake more than I am on Team Spider.
I think
though.
I am too, just because they're less scary to me.
Plus, well, you can eat spiders. Apparently, tarantulas are delicious, and they cook them a lot in the Amazon. They have these big spiders that they cook, and they're a lot like crabs. They taste like crabs, and apparently they're really similar in like their lineage, their genetic.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, if you put a spider in front of me, and I didn't know what it was, I'd be fine. And even if I did know what it was, it's not going to kill you when it's dead. So
Yeah, I'd eat it.
Yeah, if it's good, if it's delectable, that's fine.
I should say I've eaten spiders before on Fear Factor. I have eaten a couple spiders. I ate a African cave dwelling spider. Jamie just freaked out.
You must have seen some things on that show, man. Like,
Yeah, I'm numb. Pretty numb.
yeah, I guess that explains a lot of your kind of more. You've seen it all.
I'm like an old prostitute. I've seen too much. 50-year-old prostitute in Holland, like whatever, smoking a cigarette.
there's nothing you can show or do to me that.
Lipstick on my teeth. I'm not even bothering to clean it off.
I'm curious about because you brought it up before, but what is your stance on Snowden? It seems like you're against the NSA, all that kind of stuff. But what is your stance on him? Like, I'm curious. Like, do you think he should come back? Do you think that he should? Is he a patriot?
I think he's more of a patriot than he is a traitor.
I agree.
But I think it's a very complex issue when you give away national secrets and you've signed an oath that you're not going to give away national secrets. You sign an oath of secrecy and then you give away national secrets. But if those national secrets are, in the case of Edward Snowden, they're very detrimental to what we think of as freedom in this country. Like if you have a bunch of people like you or me or Jamie or just a normal person, and they work at the NSA and they can, as he has said, spy on their ex-girlfriends, read their emails, go into anybody's email that you want to and check them out, and then we were also being lied to by the government about the extent of these searches. And he exposed that the president was saying it's just metadata. And he was saying, no, it's not just metadata. It's not. It's the actual emails. It's the actual text messages. It's the actual photos that you're sending to each other. They can get those. They have all of those. And that they're storing all this stuff. People were horrified. But this is also something that was exposed. There was an NSA whistleblower from, I want to say 2011. There was a guy who was I think he was a coder in the NSA, and he's gone public with this, but he didn't go public with this in the same way where he dumped a bunch of documents and let people go through them like Edward Snowden did. And he also didn't face the consequences that Edward Snowden did as well. He was criticized, and it was debated whether or not him talking about it at all was legal or whether he should be able to, but ultimately he didn't face the same kind of consequences. I mean, Edward Snowden can't live in America anymore. I mean, Chelsea Manning has been exonerated, or
pardoned.
Pardoned.
Yeah.
Is that the word? It's
Oh,
not even
it wasn't a
pardoned.
pardon.
It's commuted to sentence.
Yeah, commuted the sentence, right.
So they commuted the sentence, and she's allowed to be free in May. So in a couple months she'll be free. But he's stuck in Russia, and he essentially, the difference being, they said that Chelsea Manning went through the court system, was tried, and then Obama decided that it was a good enough amount of time, and then he was going to commute the sentence. So I kind of see their point there, that Edward Snowden fled and didn't go through the whole, but why wouldn't he flee? You're going to lock him in a fucking cage. Chelsea Manning was locked in a cage 24 hours a day with the lights on, with no fucking clothes, in solitary confinement for I don't know how long, but it was a long period of time. I want to say years. I want to say find out how long was Chelsea Manning in solitary confinement for, because I know the way they did it. It was cold in there, and they took away all her clothes, or it was his clothes at the time. Was he? When do you start saying him or her?
Yeah,
I
think
what's the deal with that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. When you're thinking back on the person before they transitioned.
Like, do you say that Bruce Jenner won the Olympics, or do you say that Caitlyn Jenner won the
Oh,
Olympics?
Jesus, I don't know.
And
I'm afraid to say the wrong thing.
Okay, the former Army analyst with 2 weeks of solitary confinement in connection with a suicide attempt in July. No. That's just one. The decline to discipline them with 2 weeks. No, but she's been in solitary confinement, not just over the suicide attempt. This is like way late. That's 2016. go not the solitary confinement after suicide attempt, but just go to solitary confinement and don't look at Chelsea. Look at Bradley Manning. Solitary confinement.
Yeah, it was before he was tried.
Yeah, it was like you could say he. Can you say he? Could you get yelled at? I bet you could.
Oh,
I bet
I'm
get
sure
yelled
you
at
will.
For say he.
But I think it's reasonable to say before the transition, when you look back in posterity on a person, maybe it's up to that person. But I would assume that the pronoun would change at that point.
Give a fuck. It's ridiculous.
It's too confusing.
It's so stupid. There's a case of a transgender fighter who was a man for 30 years, became a woman for 2 years, and started beating the fuck out of these women.
How is that okay?
Didn't tell them, by the way.
Oh, so they didn't. So the organizers or whatever didn't.
No, he didn't tell, or she, whatever, didn't tell.
Right.
The people that she was fighting. But here's the best part about it. I was debating with someone online, and this woman said that she's always been a woman, that this person has always been a woman. And I said, okay, do you realize that this person fathered a child? I said, so even when he was a man having sex with a woman and got her pregnant, he was a woman then? And this woman goes, even then. I'm like, okay, we're done. Well, fuck you.
That doesn't make any sense. That doesn't make any sense.
Okay, 23 hours a day for over an 11-month period.
Holy shit.
And conditions that he also found might have constituted torture.
I was going to say, that sounds torturous.
Yeah, Juan Mendez has completed a 14-month investigation into the treatment of Manning since the soldier's arrest at the U.S. military base in May of 2010. He concludes the U.S. military was at least culpable of cruel and inhumane treatment in keeping Manning locked up alone for 23 hours a day for over an 11-month period in conditions that he found. Okay, so yeah, that was what it was. It was almost a year of solitary confinement, and I'm pretty sure that he at the time, she now, was naked, and they took everything away from him. No books, no nothing. Solitary confinement.
No, nothing to read. Nothing
and cold. They keep it cold. They keep it cold where you're like barely able to tolerate it.
Holy shit! What do you do? Like, what are the places your mind goes?
I would start doing kung fu.
Yeah.
I would
just start working it. Yeah.
I'd be like Wesley Snipes in that one movie where they kept him locked up. I think stripped naked at night. Yeah. I think that, what they did was what they are allowed to do. You're allowed to do whatever you want to do. When you get someone locked up like that, they don't really have the kind of rights that an average person does. You get locked up for treason. And there was a tremendous amount of heat coming towards the U.S. military when that WikiLeaks video, what was it called? What did they call it? Something about collateral murder. I think that was what they called the video.
Was it drones or was it?
No, it was a helicopter.
Oh, I know. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
helicopter shooting fucking horrific gunfire down on these people that turned out to be reporters. And then the callous attitude that these soldiers showed in the video, we could hear them talking about whether or not there were kids in the van. Well, they shouldn't have brought kids. Like, the whole thing was like really dark.
Yeah.
And I think in a lot of ways, exposure to that stuff is good because unchecked behavior is extremely dangerous. That seemed like it was unchecked. And it seemed like unchecked behavior in a time of war is extremely dangerous. And it was pretty obvious that when you looked at what Edward Snowden had revealed, it was pretty obvious that the majority of the American people had a huge problem with it. The majority of the American people, you or I, who are doing nothing wrong. I'm not committing any crimes. I'm certainly not victimizing anybody. Why do they have access to my email? Why? There's no reason. No reason. You just can. Like that seems insane. And that to me is a way clearer violation of the Fourth Amendment than this weird sort of gray area, not necessarily gray if you were looking at it from a constitutional sense, of how they're allowed to check you at the airport.
Yeah, no, that's a very valid and solid argument, I think, because my stance on Manning specifically has softened over time, because I feel like, when he or she, I don't know.
Can we call her Z?
Z. I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I just don't know what I'm supposed to.
You are being disrespectful.
I'm
you
sorry.
Fucking son of a bitch.
I'm sorry.
You're racist too. I heard.
I know. That's what LexisNexis will call me, a racist for the rest of my life. But to me, it was like, I felt like it was very they didn't take the time to people died because of that stuff. Like there were people that were put in danger because of the things that they were put out, because they didn't carefully comb through it and make sure that
is that
people
true? People died?
Yeah, I mean, you could. I don't think that they. Yeah, please look that up.
So that's because of the way WikiLeaks released it.
Yeah, because I don't know if they're going to point at specific things, but the way things were outed, like I don't think all of the names were blacked out. I don't think like the operations in process, like people were in play, that were being outed in that way.
Right.
I think the reason I was a little softer on Snowden was because not only was it domestic primarily, but which I think is an important qualifier, but also because I think he went out of his way to not single any individuals out. It was all about the apparatus itself. It wasn't about like saying like General blah 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 is doing this and General blah or Admiral blah. It was about like, hey, this structure exists and it's really as quite nefarious indeed, and I think that, so I was always, to me, my stance on him is he's a patriot and he should be welcomed home. And the fact that he can't be, I guess, pardoned, he hasn't been tried or whatever, but the fact that, I know that some people think that Obama only pardoned Manning because it made him look good with the transgender community and with the LGBTQ community, which I think is a little.
He's leaving office though. What?
Well, because it's part of his legacy. Like it's part of saying like it's the same reason why how much Ford was hurt when he pardoned Nixon. That stuck with him forever in a negative way. Well, this is going to stick with Obama, I think, positively, in a good way, moving forward. But I don't know that I'm quite that callous in thinking that that's the only reason. I think that he probably had time to marinate on it. Clearly, she went through some rigors.
Well, also, what's important to point out is that Obama's website, the Hope and Change website that he had when he was running for president and when he got into office, the original website had in it these provisions for how he was going to treat whistleblowers they were going to like allow people to release information that showed crimes, and they were going to protect them. They were going to protect whistleblowers. It was a very specific statement. It was a very specific approach that they were having while he was running for president about whistleblowers, because he was about exposing these egregious offenses. And once he got into office, one of the things that happened after the Chelsea Manning thing and after the Edward Snowden things, they removed that from the Hope and Change website. They removed that provision about whistleblowers.
Interesting,
because it's obviously he was unable. He's either a hypocrite or is unable to keep that promise.
Right. Well, that goes back to the whole thing with Snowden when you were saying, well, you kind of take an oath, to protect these secrets and all that kind of stuff. But
yeah.
I look at it, I don't want people to be flippant with that kind of stuff like you were saying. I don't want people to be flippantly being like, well, I have some sort of personal problem with this. But I actually think it takes a level of courage to be like, what in the fuck is going on here?
Oh, for sure. And also, I believe that before he gave that information to Glenn Greenwald, I believe he offered it to a bunch of different mainstream news sources like the New York Times, Washington Post. Correct me if I'm wrong, Jamie.
I think that was in the documentary,
I didn't see it.
Oh, it's Citizen 4 or something like that. Yeah.
I fell asleep. Tried to watch it in a hotel room. What's up, Jamie?
I was going to say, which one do you want me to look up? Because I got that. It said no one died as a result.
Oh,
of
okay. Well, I'm wrong.
So
which one? Which one?
The one earlier
leaks.
about Manning.
Oh, okay.
But Jamie, it doesn't say anything about like that. That was, I remember that being contentious. That they were saying the reason that they were upset about it was because they were like, this puts people that are in play in danger now.
Well, maybe that. Maybe
so maybe
puts them in danger.
Right.
But maybe no one actually died.
Yeah,
that's good to know.
A writer had a USA Today piece, I think, about it, and she got a lot of heat for even writing that. In the first place.
That puts people in danger?
That people died from the result of his leaks.
Okay, so like, no, she got a lot of heat because they haven't.
Yeah,
Oh, interesting.
That's probably what it is. You probably read that.
Okay.
Yeah, man, people, again, you're a racist, and people have died.
I mean, Google says it.
But you know what I'm saying? I mean, like, people need clickbait. So with her writing an article saying that a bunch of people died or someone died, it's kind of the same thing. They're trying to make something juicier.
Sure, even with the London terrorist attack, the
most recent one.
Yeah, the one that just happened, where they seem to have identified the person. News sources that are you think are reputable say it, and then they have to retract it later. Everyone's very quick to try to pull the gun first and be like, well, we have the story.
Yeah,
and then we're all victimized as people that are just we're not in the trenches, so we need the information. We have to trust these people, and trust is broken, I think, in a way.
I certainly think there should be some sort of a national debate on whether or not Edward Snowden is a hero. Whether or not Edward Snowden did something that benefited the American people. Because I certainly think the overall reaction, like if you look at what Edward Snowden did and then you look at what are the consequences of what he did, I think it's good for us because we got to see that all these Alex Jones type conspiracies were actually true. when Alex Jones is ranting and raving about the government, looking in your emails.
One of the great episodes of this show, by the way. I love it. Yeah.
But people were looking into that like there's no fucking way. There's no way the government really looks into your email. There's no way. It doesn't happen. But yes, they do. Like that was a stunner to me. And this for me was. I'd been telling people that Alex Jones, who's my friend and has been my friend for a long time, and I get criticized so much by people for that. They're like, he's so crazy and he's such a fucking right-wing wacko. I'm like, Alex Jones is not right-wing. He's not. He's anti-government. He's anti-tyranny, and he might be crazy as fuck, and he probably is. But he's right about a lot of shit, and that's where it gets really scary. So he was talking about the NSA looking into people's emails and having the ability to, like, I found out about that NSA whistleblower, the original one. See if you could find who that guy is. I want to say, yes. Pull up that article. I found out about that from Alex. He told me about it. I went, what? And then I hear Bill Binney, the original NSA whistleblower on Snowden, 9/11, and illegal surveillance. Now he was, oh God, I want to say it was before 9/11. Wasn't it before 9/11 that he came out with this? Scroll down. Or was it right after 9/11? He believes that 9/11 was preventable a month after it happened. He resigned to protest from the National Security Agency. Binney was part of an elite NSA team which designed and built an intelligence gathering system to target and collect data on terrorism threats. He belongs to an intimate group of 4 whistleblowers, each of whom left the NSA after raising concerns about failures in the agency's intelligence gathering capabilities. Yeah, so he was the first guy that was saying what they're doing is bullshit, and he alleges
yeah, there it is.
The NSA buried key intelligence that could have prevented 9/11. He alleges the agency's bulk data collection from internet and telephone communications is unconstitutional and illegal in the U.S. He alleges that the NSA is ineffective at preventing terrorism because analysts are too swamped with information. Now, that makes sense. Under its bulk collection program. That totally makes sense.
Yeah, when you have everything, where do you begin?
Yeah, I mean, all those things that he said. I mean, there's no way. I mean, that's the thing. Like, a friend of mine was joking around about this because, man, I'm just not comfortable with the NSA reading my email. I go, of course you're not comfortable. I'm not either. But guess what? Who's fucking reading your shit, man? Nobody's reading your shit.
Yeah, no, yeah. That's not even the point, right? It goes back to the point we're making, because with the Patriot Act after 9/11, they made the same argument. Well, if you have nothing to hide,
right? But the problem is, as soon as something comes up, like they go, this Colin Moriarty's been talking a lot of shit. Let's find out what he's into.
Right.
Oh, look at that, a bunch of dick pics.
Right.
Time to put
Don't
those
tell
online.
anyone that.
Hey, bro, nothing wrong with dick pics.
Yeah, no, I think I think we're in the league with that. I think Snowden is like a hero. I feel like what he did took a lot of courage, and it blew up his life.
I would like to, if I go to Russia, and I might go to Russia for the UFC, I'd like to meet that dude. I'd like to interview him.
He probably would talk to you.
Jamie, you want to go to Russia? Big pause. We'll talk about this off.
My dad went when I was younger, and I was trying to think of like,
I don't want to
how
put
did
you on
that
the
go
spot.
for him?
I don't want to put you on the spot, but if it was possible to meet that guy, I would love to meet that guy. I don't know if they just let you meet him though. I bet it would be like really hard. I know John Oliver met him.
Shane Smith did too.
Yeah, that's right. Maybe I could go with Shane. Get Shane to hook it up.
He would probably love to talk to you. I mean, he seems like an interesting. He's probably under constant surveillance. You have to assume, but
I'm sure I would be fucked when I came back. They'd probably check everything.
Oh my God! Yeah.
I would like to sit down with that guy for a few hours, like do like a 6-hour interview with him and just pick him apart and ask, like, what is your life like now, man?
Mm-hmm.
Like, how many Russian chicks you banging? Like, are you a hero over here?
I mean,
do they pay you? How do you eat? What do you do to feed yourself? Like, where's he getting his money?
He must get a stipend of some sort. You have to assume, right? I mean,
From
he
the
has to know.
government?
You have to. I mean, he's a guest of theirs, so you have to assume that he's taken care of in some way.
Right, but I mean, he probably has to keep his value high. Like at a certain point in time, like they could say, "Hey, you're not valuable to us anymore. Time to live in Guatemala, bitch." You know?
He's a very smart man, so he must know at the highest level that he's a geopolitical pawn that, like you said, could be played in any way at any point. You know,
if I was him, I would just be listening to Rosetta Stone with Russia all day long. I'd be like, I need to find out how to speak Russian, and I need to fucking go hide in Siberia or some shit. I need to grow my beard out.
Yeah, he's an interesting cat. Like I'm somewhat fascinated by him. I think he'll come back at some point.
Neil deGrasse Tyson had a fascinating interview with him on Star Talk Radio, where I was, and Neil deGrasse Tyson essentially was saying the same thing, that he thinks he's a patriot. You know, and Neil doesn't really take too many stances like that are really political in that regard. But I think as far as like data collection, random, just a blanket data collection of all the people in the United States, I think it's fucked, and it's absolutely not what we think of when we think of the freedom that the United States supposedly provides its citizens. It seems like we're all under suspicion then. We're all being under surveillance. That's some really creepy Orwell type shit. That's just, it's not what we want.
It's extremely Orwellian, and I feel like with Snowden, sometimes people miss the forest for the trees with it. They're very focused on the man,
Yes.
the act, but they're not focused on, one of the things that I'm really interested in is like, what is the complicity, what is the level of complicity with the telecoms? Like, what is the complicity with the government, like forcing these people and and how many thousands of people are in on this? And that's the crazy thing, is that Snowden, who was a contractor, not even really in the inner sanctum of the NSA,
right,
knew all of this stuff.
Yeah.
There are people running around, thousands of people just acting like this never happened or wasn't going on. It's not a conspiracy because we know it's true, but it's a pretty big thing where I'm like, focusing on Snowden is missing the entire point. There's like, why are all the, like, why didn't no one, like no Sprint or T-Mobile or anyone was like, hey, imagine the kind of coup would have been for one of those companies to be like, we're not doing this, and in fact, like, we're going to tell everyone. It'll this will make us look amazing. Well, from a very shrewd corporate stance, be like, well, we don't cooperate with it.
But let's be honest, that would never happen. And if it did happen, they would come down on that company so hard. There has to be some weird sort of arrangements that these gigantic telecommunication companies like Verizon or something has with the federal government. I mean, it just has to be.
I think it's just protecting the bottom. I mean, I'm sure that there's something they can do, but they don't care about anything but money. So.
Well, I have a friend who used to be a big executive at Google, and she described to me some of the conversations that they had when they were dealing with the government and search engines and being able to access people's search engine results, and then also with China. Like how when Google went over to China, like there was very specific things that they had to agree to with the government in order to make sure that they were there.
Right.
Like they had to restrict the searches. They had to censor things. I mean, the government of China does not feel the same way about freedom as the government of the United States, and the government of the United States gets real sketchy with it. As soon as you're doing what Edward Snowden has proven that they're doing, you're getting really sketchy with freedom. I mean, you can land of the free, home of the brave, except I want to look at your dick pics. Except I want to read your emails.
Right.
Except I want to listen to your voicemails. Except I want to be able to track your calls. Except I want to be able to know where your phone is at all times. I mean, that metadata from where the location of your phone is one of the primary ways they target terrorists. I mean, the people who are not aware of why so many civilians die in these terrorist attacks, part of the reason, especially in the early days of drone attacks, when they were trying to target terrorists, was that they would use the metadata. They would find out where the phones are. So if your phone was in this apartment building, they're going to bomb that apartment building. It's like, whoa.
Yeah, it's very deep. It's very technical, and I have no problem with them going to a shadow court and getting like a permission to be like, we're tracking this guy's phone now.
Right.
We're reading this guy or this organization's emails or people that are kind of within 7 degrees of separation or whatever from this person.
Mm-hmm.
There, at least there's some sort of orderly nature to it, right? Like, you don't need to be reading my emails, or my I'm just getting Uber receipts sent to my email. It's like what. Why are you even storing all this? And like, what use is it other than that? Obviously, they want trends, they want data that they can big. High up data, eagle eye data, and saying like this is the trend and all these kinds of things, but it's all ill begotten because it's like it's not right. And that was the disappointing, and you probably feel the same way, Joe. Is like after Snowden and NSA was a big story, but then everyone kind of just like and everyone kind of forgot. Well, they're still kind of doing a lot of the same, kind of thing. They didn't affect, like, we know about it now, but we don't know the level of change that was affected really. And
we don't.
And to me, I feel like this is the thing where you got to keep the pedal down and you got to keep going and be like, this is not okay. This is not right. And it's the same thing with the Patriot Act back in the day, where everyone was really upset about that. Well, you have every right to be upset about that. That's really egregious stuff.
Sure, the NDAA. I mean, the NDAA, what they've essentially done is they've eliminated the right of due process. They can lock you up for as long as they want. They can deny you any sort of legal representation. That's all been taken away from us now. What used to be one of the foundations of being an American, the right to due process, the right to have a lawyer, the right to a trial of your own peers, all that stuff is kind of gone now. If they just decide that you're a terrorist, and they could decide you're a terrorist if you have weed on you, if you're involved in illegal drugs, you can be under the Patriot Act considered a terrorist. It's really kind of crazy.
It is, and it's scary in the sense too, because it goes back to what they were saying, or what this gentleman was saying that we were just talking about, where he was saying like they have too much data, they have too much to work with, and at some point someone has to be like, hey, the guy with an ounce of weed, or the guy with, even with 4 ounces of weed, why are we dumping him in with all the stuff that's just going to muddy the waters more about the real target that we're really going after, which is someone that's actually going to hurt someone, or someone that's actually going to cause a terrorist incident. To me, I would, if I were them, I'd be like, we need less. We need way more targeted data. We need to leave 325 million people alone, probably.
At least. And here's another big part of the problem was that when Obama was instituting these changes, and when the NDAA got passed, and when people were saying, well, hey, we're never going to use it. This is one of the things that they said. We're never going to hold people without legal representation indefinitely. We're never going to use the indefinite detainment. Okay, but that's you. What if a crazy person becomes president? Cut to President Trump.
Right.
We now have a crazy person.
Yep.
Crazy person is now president, and you're like, well, now what? Well, what about these fucking crazy laws, Obama, that you passed when you thought that it would be nothing but your standard politicians and hopefully Democrats from now to the end of time? Guess what? Now it's not. Now it's a guy who wants to dismantle the Environmental Protection Agency. Now it's a guy who wants to drill pipelines through the Dakota Access. This is a guy that wants to do a lot of stuff that people find to be troubling. And this guy has the same rights to use the NDAA as you did. And he's the new guy, and he's kind of crazy.
Yeah, and that this is the level of restraint that needs to be shown by someone in that position, because...
And he hasn't done anything yet. I mean, you can't say he has used it, but he's only been in office for a couple of months.
Yeah, give him time. But to me, it goes back to the argument of executive orders. It goes back to the argument of all these things or the filibuster in the Senate, where what's good for the goose is good for the gander. You can't set up these rules that are just going to backfire on you and then complain about them later. To me, I think it's a huge mistake. That's why I have a lot of respect for presidents. We haven't had one in a long time that are more restrained. The presidents that defer executive power and actually say, like, maybe the legislature should be dealing with these kinds of things. We need a man like that, or a woman like that.
Who's ever done that?
Oh, I mean, it's been a long time. The Gilded Age, you have Coolidge and Harding and those guys. But ever since FDR, really, the imperial presidency grew in power and all these kinds of things. And before you knew it, you had a little canaries in the coal mine with, like, I was actually talking to Dave about it last night with Eisenhower, with the military-industrial complex and all these kinds of things.
That was amazing, wasn't it?
Yeah, like an amazing, like, I don't think people realize how insane that is, that man said that.
Well, explain what he said and when he said it.
So Eisenhower was president from 52 to 60, so technically 53 to 61, and he was obviously one of the instrumental generals in the Allied assaults on Japan and on Nazi Germany, and he saw the influence of the military growing, and that in the Cold War, in the nascent era of the Cold War, that we were making bombs to make bombs, that we were trying to have conflicts like with Korea, which he did end in the early 50s, and seeing these seeds sown of a perpetual war that the economy was actually benefiting from.
Jamie, pull up that speech, because it's an amazing speech. It would be nice for people to hear it, because a lot of people are not aware of the tone and the way he said it, and it was when he was leaving office. Sorry if I'm not doing a good job of explaining.
No, it's okay.
No. You did a great job.
Okay, and so he's a man of a military background. Everyone loved Eisenhower, Ike, because of what he did in the war, and he two-term president. Nixon was his vice president, very popular. But at the end, he was like, "You gotta watch what's going on over here. I'm telling you,
yes,
you can trust me. I'm from that world, and watch what's happening." It's a great speech.
Play it, Jamie. It's a cool speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
Good evening, my fellow Americans. We now stand 10 years past the midpoint of a century that has witnessed 4 major wars among great nations. Until the latest of our world conflicts, the United States had no armaments industry. American makers of plowshares could, with time and as required, make swords as well. But we can no longer risk emergency improvisation of national defense. We have been compelled to create a permanent armaments industry of vast proportions. Added to this, 3.5 million men and women are directly engaged in the defense establishment. Now, this conjunction of an immense military establishment and a large arms industry is new in the American experience. The total influence, economic, political, even spiritual, is felt in every city, every state house, every office of the federal government. We recognize the imperative need for this development, yet we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. Our toil, resources, and livelihood are all involved. So is the very structure of our society. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
Wow.
We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together.
Jesus.
It's an amazing, at the time that was an amazing speech, and it's just prescient.
Yeah.
You know, like it's, because people have to understand, and you know, like before World War II, you know, we weren't a built up and militarized society. We would militarize when we needed to. And it was really Teddy Roosevelt and all those kinds of guys that started to kind of like getting a little more, you know, bullish in that kind of regard with the Spanish-American War and the USS Maine. And then, you know, but the fight over World War I was real. You know, we didn't want to get involved. We got involved very late. And people take for granted now that we have just massive military, we have this massive power. But in the 19th century, that not that they're, you know, you can't equate them necessarily to the 21st century. We weren't going around running roughshod over people and like doing those kinds of things. We were very isolationist. That was kind of the American tradition. And to hear that come out of Eisenhower's mouth, especially knowing his experiences in the war and his deep knowledge of the military and what was going on in the world, it's one of the great warnings of all time in American history.
And it's very wise on his part because he recognized that there's survival systems that are a part of any industry. You know, I mean, there's survival mechanisms, and the industry wants to stay alive. If all of a sudden there's peace on Earth, this gigantic industry, this multiple $billion-a year industry. I mean, I don't know how much. It's trillions a year, right? What's the military budget per year?
It's $600 billion a year.
$600 billion
new spending.
Of new spending.
So, you know, you have trillions of dollars worth of equipment.
Jesus Christ. So that massive amount of money, there's so many people that are involved in that and so many jobs that have to be preserved. And so much of the industry relies on keeping conflict active. And I think that's what he was trying to warn us about. But it's so interesting about it. And it involves citizenry and that people need to be aware of it. And to hear that from the president, you're never going to hear anything remotely as even close to as candid as that is today.
No, absolutely not. And I think that even hearing that from, you know, just to reiterate, like hearing that from a Barack Obama, for instance, would be strong, right? Mm-hmm. But hearing that from a Ulysses S. Grant or a Zachary Taylor or a guy that served, especially at the level he served, is like that meant something to people.
Oh,
and I think that's why that saying never went away, but under our noses it happened. And what he said was going to happen is exactly what happened in the Southeast Asia, in Vietnam, Cambodia, Laos. He called it from a fucking mile away.
Well, it wasn't even a mile away because he was living there. I mean, he was in the heat of it. In 1960, when he made that speech, you think about the Gulf of Tonkin incident. I mean, that's just a few years later. Mm-hmm. Just a few years later, they had a false flag that allowed people to get enthusiastic about entering into the Vietnam War, and that's where it all came from.
Right, and it's the same. You know, some people say the USS Maine in Spanish-American War in 1898 was another false flag or something that was they let happen or something that was blown out of proportion. Not you know, pardon the pun, because it was about a ship blowing up. But yeah, it's one of those. It is a provocation that gets everyone involved, and we had this nemesis. It was good versus evil. We were upset. We saw, I think, especially against the Nazis, we saw what the stature of the good versus evil argument, and we won. So with the Allies, so I think we tried to perpetuate that. Immediately, the Soviets became the evil, and then we created our bombs, and then they created their bombs, and then we just had these proxy wars that we were fighting against the Chinese in Korea, and the Soviets in Vietnam. Really, like all these things that were kind of, you know, everyone knew what was going on, but no one. I'm sorry.
Please go. No.
I was just going to say. So I think that when everything started to get peaceful, what do they call it? Glasnost in the Soviet, which is like the idea of like a new era, like peace and prosperity with the West or whatever, in like the late 70s, early 80s. I think that the Boeings of the world and the Halliburtons of the world were like, oh shit, you know, and come 90s, pretty peaceful, but we immediately found new targets, and we should be wary of why that happened. You know, I'm not saying that we shouldn't necessarily fight. We have to fight sometimes, but to have this industrialized nature of it, to have this need to lurch from one war to the next war to the next war to the next war, is not what a thriving republic does. It's what a dying empire does.
Well, it's definitely what an empire that's dependent upon the control, or rather an industry rather, that's dependent upon the control that it has currently, maintaining it. You need to maintain that money. You need to maintain the business of making these machines and of having these contracts. I mean, it's a huge industry, and like all of these unlimited growth industries, it's very, like, every business essentially operates under this paradigm of unlimited growth, or most businesses do, most corporations do, where they every year they want to make more money. And if that's applicable to a company that makes tanks, well, every year they want to make more money, they want to make more tanks. We don't need tanks anymore. Well, oh, the fuck you don't. You definitely need oh, look what's going on over here in Yemen.
Right.
Oh shit, you need some tanks.
Right, exactly.
I mean, and that's means Team America World Police. It's really crazy.
It's scary, and it's a scary waste of money too.
Yeah.
Because I don't think that I really do feel like we should have the most powerful military in the world. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
I think you're right.
I think a powerful republic can have those kinds of things, but we don't need all of these bases that are legacy bases. Why are we still in Japan? Why are we still in,
in case they talk some shit or Godzilla shows up? Trump's proposed hike to military spending is bigger than all but 2 countries' entire budgets. Well, that's because we're America and we're better than everybody else.
Yeah, I want to say...
Get that communist shit off my screen.
I want to say... I mean, this is incredible, Joe. I want to say... I think this is right, that if you split the military spending of the world in thirds, we are responsible for a third of it, 10 countries are responsible for another third of it, and then everyone else is responsible for another third of it. We have 4.5% of the world's population. So this is way out of whack with even our needs, like our actual very need to protect ourselves. I think it's just way out of whack.
Right, but when you get past those 10 countries, the other third, and then us, that's 11 countries. Everybody else is using coconuts and catapults.
Yeah,
They're
essentially, yeah.
throwing rocks at each other. So,
but there's relative tranquility, like outside of the Middle East and in Eastern Europe with Ukraine and Russia. There's general peace to be had in these countries that might not spend a lot of money or might not even have a lot of money to spend. I'm not saying I want to live like they do in I don't want to say I want to live like they do in Sri Lanka or Bangladesh or something like that. But I'm saying,
what are you
like,
trying to say, man? What are you, racist?
No, well, that's already been established by the International Business Times, Jim. But to me, I just look at it. I'm like, we can spend this money wiser, and we can ramp up and have plans to ramp up. People forget, and you know, GM, Ford, all these guys were making our armaments. You know, Mitsubishi made the Japanese Zeros. IBM, offshoots of IBM, were making friggin' punch card machines for the Nazis. You know, like people, you know, for better or for worse, ramp up and do what they need to do in times of war to make money. And so we could have a plan in place to say, like, hey, if we need to ramp up, if something bad happens, if we need to go overseas or something, if we have to go engage the Russians because they're rolling into the rest of Ukraine, for instance, we have we can take care of that without having bases all over the world.
Well, the problem with that kind of thinking is, as soon as you say that, then they realize, well, there's a lot of money to be had if that is the case. So let's make that the case. And then there's some weird fucking covert, sneaky shit going down. And do you have an earring on both ears? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, sorry.
Are the headphones irritating you?
Oh, no. I just like to hear whenever I do this. No. The earrings have been in since I was like 18. I just never took them out. I'm superstitious. So
You're superstitious?
Yeah, so I don't like to... You know, not like overtly superstitious, but I'm afraid to take them out. I'm afraid to do different things.
Do you have a We the People tattoo on your arm?
Yeah, We the People, and then I have Franklin's association snake on my arm.
So you're like join or die. Wow. So you're like a serious, almost like a fan of politics.
Yeah.
Is that a way to describe it?
Sure. I mean, when I went to college, I went to school for American history. And I graduated, and when I got my job offer in the video game industry, I was about to start my graduate degree at Northeastern in American history because I wanted to be a professor at the time. So my real passion was American history and American politics, but I veered off into a different direction.
How did that
I'm sorry.
No, please go.
I was just going to say, so these are like relics. So I got these when I was like 20, you know.
Wow, that's interesting, man. Those are unusual tattoos for a 20-year-old.
Yeah, I just, you know, I love... I'm really interested in the founding generation. I'm really interested in their experiences, and the American Revolution, I think, is a fascinating revolution compared to a lot of other revolutions, primarily because it is, I think, an inherently, in some ways, conservative revolution, which is not common. These were incredibly rich people fighting. These weren't like poor, destitute people. John Hancock had something like 1/350th of all of the value of the colonies under his name. Wow. These people had everything to risk and everything to lose. So it's like an interesting I think, very principled revolution that they fought. Although if you read like Howard Zinn or something, they would say that they did it to protect their money. But
I'm sure they did, but I'm sure they had all other motives as well.
of course.
And it's a sort of an unprecedented thing in human history. I mean, it's a really crazy union that we've established over here.
Yeah.
And to see all of these things that threaten what we find so amazing about it, like the violations of the Fourth Amendment, all the NSA stuff with Edward Snowden, all these different things that we see that are huge problems. What they are is also they're weakening the foundation of these ideas that were so amazing when they were first established in 1776.
Yeah, and to me, that's why I think that they're worth protecting. It goes into the like, is the Constitution living or not? Are you a strict constructionist or a loose constructionist? All those kinds of questions I think are valid. But to me, I'm like, we have this very unique vision into what the founders intended, because they were one of the few, I think, people at that time that were like, we're gonna, the Federalist Papers are incredible if you read them. Like, you don't have to wonder what they meant.
Right.
They literally tell you exactly what they meant. So when you go to Supreme Court cases, I don't know that there are many Supreme Court cases that don't even reference the Federalist Papers, because it's like, well, they said this at Article 3, Section 2, but actually in this paper that they wrote anonymously that we know Alexander Hamilton wrote, here's what he said about it. And I think that's interesting stuff.
Now, how did this knowledge of politics and how did this fascination that you have with the history of the United States, how did this get you in, quote unquote, trouble in the video game industry with these people that are predominantly left-wing and predominantly progressive? Like, quote, I say progressive, but progressive is kind of a dirty word now. It's becoming...
There's a difference between liberal and progressive.
Well, it would be great if everybody was liberal. It would be great if everybody was progressive. It would be great if everybody wanted people to have, freedom of choice and freedom to be whoever you want. But that's not really what those things are anymore. Those things are like ideologies. They're these predetermined patterns of behavior that people subscribe to in a very, very rigid way. What did you find was an issue when people found out about your extreme understanding and respect for the history of the United States?
Well, they think primarily they think it was like kind of a joke, because not a haha joke, but like you're a clown kind of, because
why?
Because I believe in a small government, for instance. I believe in low taxation. I believe in the elimination of the income tax and things like this. These are but I don't actually have, like, not all my ideas are radical or even outside of the mainstream. Socially, I'm probably further to the left than many of these people. I think that it goes back to this idea, and this is something Dave Rubin has touched on a lot in his show, which I'm sure you're familiar with, which is this idea that it's really all or nothing. Like, they don't want to be an ally with someone that might be able to help them in X, Y, and Z if they disagree with people in A, B, and C. Mm-hmm. So they could have had a great ally in me and being like, I've been pro-gay marriage forever. I've been pro-choice. I'm for the decriminalization of drugs. I'm for the legalization of prostitution. I'm for a lot of these things that are very far to the left socially that we probably could find some agreement on somewhere, and we can work on those things and get those things done together. But because I say also, like, hey, the income tax is predatory and really hurts people. I owned a business, and I guess I own another one now. And I know, like, that I could have hired another person if taxes weren't so onerous on me. Right. And so I also stand on there, and they're like, this never happened. This stuff that you just said never happened. This left-wing stuff that we agree on never happened because you don't believe in. Because you have this one thing that we have a problem with. Now we're going to get you.
But you're not being clear about that. Like, okay. What is the issue when it comes to small government? Like, you wanting small government, what's the opposition to that? What are they saying?
Well, they say, like, they make a lot of it's insinuations, because a lot of it isn't even things that I feel or believe. Okay. So an example would be, I see a lot of people say all the time, like, Colin doesn't believe in welfare, or Colin doesn't believe in Social Security. And I'm like, I never said that, actually. I believe that these things should be reformed and maybe taken back a step. But they even look at that as a push too far on the system. I guess what I'm trying to say to you, and I'm sorry I'm not being more lucid with you, I'm trying my hardest, is that you have to agree with them lockstep.
Right.
If they see you in one way that is injurious to their cause, or that is conflicting or contrary to what they believe, they do not give a fuck about anything else you believe. And that's the thing that always frustrated me, and what so surprised me when people really were running me out on a rail out of the gaming industry with a completely innocuous joke, which I think tells you everything you need to know about the intent, that they don't want allies in different ways, allies in different clothes, allies in different, they just want complete, it's very Orwellian. They just want you to be completely like them, and if you're not like them, they don't want anything to do with you. And it's not even like I was advocating for anything crazy. I don't advocate for anything crazy, I don't think.
That doesn't sound crazy at all. But what's interesting is we've kind of turned a corner where in many ways the right is more tolerant than the left to variations in their ideology. Whereas the right is much more tolerant to people that support gay marriage. The right is much more tolerant to people that, I mean, you can fill in the blanks. There's a bunch of different rights that the right would sort of accept from someone who also voted Republican. But the left isn't. Like if you got to the point where, like, I got in a heated argument with someone once about abortion, which I'm pro-choice, but I was saying, well, essentially, it was a criticism of Richard Dawkins' quote where he's comparing a human embryo to a pig fetus or a pig embryo. Well, I forget the terms he used, but I'm like, well, that's ridiculous because one of them is going to become a person if you don't take it out of your body.
Right.
And that was the idea behind it. Like, you can't use that sort of an analogy because it's not true. I mean, it's just one has the potential for being a person. And I was being accused by this guy of being right-wing because of it. And I was like, well, I'm not right-wing. I'm just talking about the potential for life. Like, a pig embryo is never going to be my neighbor Mike. You know, it's just not. You know what I mean?
Right, of course.
But that baby, I'm not saying you should be forced to make that baby a person and keep it in your body when it's a few cells and then 2 weeks old and then I'm not saying that you can't choose when to terminate your pregnancy. But what I'm saying is you're terminating a pregnancy. We both know what you're doing. I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to do it, but to pretend that it's not messy. And nobody wants it to be messy. Nobody wants it to be a complicated issue. They want it to be cut and dry. If you're on the left in particular, it's pro-choice, a woman's reproductive choice, the freedom of your body to do what you want. I get all that. I'm 100% with you. But let's not lie about what it is, because as soon as we distort the reality of what the thing is, then we put up these ideological boundaries and blinders, and we make communication very difficult, and we make these rigid ideologies almost like a religion. They're almost like dogma. And when you do that,
great way to put it.
I mean, when you do that, you have real problems because people can't communicate. So if someone does bring that up and say, well, you know, what is abortion? And then silence across the dinner table. You hear people dropping their forks and like, what is abortion? What are you doing? At what age is it okay to have an abortion? At what age is it not okay? Is it okay to abort a baby a day before it's born? No.
No,
okay.
of course not.
How about a month before? No. How about 2 months before? No. How about 3? How about 4? How about 5? How about 6? How about 7? Where do we, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where do we get to the point where it's not a baby? And I think that's a viable conversation, and it's a very uncomfortable discussion. As soon as you do, like me saying it right now, there's people listening to this right now that are in their car. Maybe there's a woman listening to this that's had an abortion. She's like, I don't want to hear this, and she wants to shut it off. Maybe there's a guy who's trying to pressure his wife or girlfriend into having an abortion, and he doesn't want to hear it. But what is it? What is abortion? What is it?
Right. It's and this is what I always call this issue to me particularly, Joe, is a 60-40 issue. What I always say is, like, I am pro-choice, but I respect the pro-life argument, and I don't think you should just have unfettered access to abortions forever. You know, like 2 months, you know, something like that, 14 weeks. I don't know what the number would be.
I don't know what the number is.
But in 14 weeks too much probably. But to me, I'm like, yeah, let's have it. You make a great point, because it is this dogmatic sense of saying, like, here's the way it is. That's it. It goes back to, you know, I heard you talking about it. I was so glad to hear you say it, because it goes back to, like, the war on women, right? Like, there's just a whole group of people apparently in the country, 150 million of them, that hate women, that because they're pro-life, for instance, which is a stance I don't share but I respect. Why does that mean that they hate women? Why does it mean that, like, why does it always go from 0 to 10? You know, for, like, immediately. It's like, and then there's all these lies mixed in, like the pay gap, which is a fucking lie. It's just a complete lie.
It's not just a lie. It's a lie that's perpetrated by Obama on TV talking about it. I mean, it's such a confusing lie.
It's just bizarre. It is demonstrably false.
Yeah.
And it is a lie. So why do I why does everyone want to be so divisive? Why do you want to add more fuel to the fire when you can be like, hey, well, maybe we have problem X, Y, and Z, but this isn't a problem, actually.
I saw it again recently. It was recently in the news. Somebody brought it up, and they're unchecked and unchallenged. Just explain to people, if they were, because I've done it too many times.
Okay.
Explain to people what the real pay gap is and what the issue is and why it's used incorrectly.
So the pay gap claimed by studies, I guess the Department of Labor or something, is 21 cents or something like that. So it's saying, right. I think something like 79, every dollar a woman makes 79 cents. That's true only if you take every man, every woman, take all of the money they make and divide it by the amount of men and the amount of women. Doesn't take into account careers, doesn't take into account personal choices. Women, for instance, leave the workforce to have families. Sometimes men are gravitating towards engineering or physics or things that pay them a lot of money, while women tend maybe towards psychology or something like that. I think the argument is something like 9 out of the 10 top grossing career choices are men dominated, and 9 out of the 10 lowest career money making career choices are actually dominated by women. I think the only exception there is clergy, which is dominated by men. And so, but it doesn't adjust for any of these things. So when you actually adjust for choices, when you adjust for careers and longevity and hours and all of these things that are relevant, the pay gap closes to something like less than 5 cents. And then there's even arguments saying that those could probably be explained away completely as well, depending on, I know Christina Summers and some of these people that know way more about this than I do have videos about. If you actually dive in, you probably can get rid of the entire number completely. But it's preposterous to say that the women makes 79 cents for every dollar.
And it's just repeated ad nauseum. The real issue is it's implying that two people working alongside each other at the Apple store, the man is making $5 an hour, the woman is making 79 cents an hour less.
Yeah,
or 79 cents per dollar less.
Right, a significant amount. And I like the argument because it's true. Why not? Why, if that was true, why wouldn't a corporation just hire women?
79 cents. I should say it right. 79 cents to every dollar the man makes.
Right.
It's just, corporations would hire women if they were just as competent and just as skilled. And it's not that. It's also men are more likely to die on the job. Men are more likely to pick way more dangerous careers like forest fire fighting, whether it's coal mining. All those things are dominated by men, and a lot of people die in them. Law enforcement, of course. There's a bunch of issues with it, but the problem is it's spewed out as an indication that we are an inherently sexist society. And whether or not you can find sexism in our society, I'm sure you can. It absolutely exists, just as racism exists. I don't think it is nearly as much of a problem as they're trying to pin it out to be. And I think there's a lot of other factors involved in why men make more money, and one of them may be the demand for a higher salary when they're being hired, better skills at negotiation, or more confidence in those sort of confrontations with employers or negotiations with employers. I mean, there's a lot of factors, but it doesn't do anybody any good to repeat a false statistic when it's provably false, and then when people find out that it's false, and then they lose confidence in the information they're being given.
It's also, I think that's one half of it. The other half of it is like, what does it say about a person that just continues to say it anyway?
Right.
Like at some point, truth doesn't matter anymore.
Right.
Like I want to have factual debates. I want to have like, this is the starting point. These are objective truths. And then let's debate about those things.
Right.
But if that's your starting point, if that's like a third of the entire reason why you're angry and in the streets in Washington, D.C., well, then I don't even know what you're angry about anymore, to be honest. It's the same. It goes back to like Occupy Wall Street or all these things where I'm like, I don't know exactly what you're angry about. And this is why this protest isn't working and isn't resonating with people.
I saw people in the March for Women, the Women's March thing, with signs talking about the gender pay gap. And so they had the time to make a sign. They had the time to take that sign and nail it to some boards and carry it around. But they didn't have time to Google whether or not that was true.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
It's also and I feel like some of them have to know, right?
Well, you know
some
what
of them
like?
have
They don't
to know.
want to know, man. It's like I read this thing once that said that sperm cures depression in women. And I didn't even look any further. I'm like, I got all the information I need out of this. I don't want this debunked. I want to be rock solid in my approach. Shut the laptop and walked out of the room. I mean, that's really what's going on. It's like, that sounds great. If women make 79 cents to every dollar a man makes, it sounds awesome. This is a bullshit society. This is the patriarchy. The patriarchy,
the evil patriarchy. Meanwhile, you ask them, you ask one of these feminists. There's no reason with feminism if the goal is for total equality, but we all know that that's not really what feminism means today. That if you sit there and be like, can you name just one thing that I can do that you can't? Just one. Like one. Like, and I'm not saying like you give birth, I can, or something like something biological. I'm saying like, what can't you do? Like if you really wanted to. I'm not saying that like as far I know, for instance, that. The examples that people give, and I haven't seen the statistics, but I've heard it circulated that even that, companies are so desperate now to hire women because of this situation, this optical situation that they're in, where it seems like women are being pushed down, that women in their 20s and 30s are actually making more now. That they're and certainly they're more likely to get a higher education. Certainly they're more likely to be, even graduate high school. So there are actually systemic benefits to being a woman, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that either. But I just feel like it goes back to that thing of like, why are we fighting? Like, what is the divisive nature? Can't we? And this goes back to your question about the video game industry. I'm like, hey, instead of yelling at me about this, we won't agree about these situations over here, but can't we advocate for these together? Or do you not want to? You don't want my advocacy for gay marriage because I believe in small government? You don't want my advocacy for transgender rights because I'm for low taxes? I'm like, okay, that's weird because we can totally be friends here. With the Women's March, I know that there were problems with pro-life organizations getting involved at a sponsorship level, even.
Oh wow, that's interesting.
And it's like they're not women,
right?
They're lesser than
because
you?
there's a debate about that one issue. Yeah,
it's strange.
You said something that I want to go back to. Like,
sure.
what do you think feminism is about?
Well, it's this argument
it's not about equality, right?
To me, feminism was about equality. And I think that this, I'm reading more about it and learning more about it, so I'm still very ignorant about it. But this more third wave, what they call third wave feminism, which I'm sure is a term you've heard, that seems to be more about a combative nature to actually, instead of like saying like men and women are equal, men and women should deserve the same rights and the same treatment and all those kinds of things. It actually seems to be very anti-man in a way. Like, it seems to be very like almost like the tables have turned, and I'm like, but why are you turning the tables? Like, didn't you achieve what you wanted like in the first place, which was just that we were going to be here together at the at the nexus of everything as two genders? Part
of the problem is that reinforcing that fake statistic, the gender pay gap, that so many people have heard that. Like, Sarah Silverman was just talking about it recently in some big thing that she did. I'm like, that's not true, but yet people just say it, and no one stops them from saying it. A friend of mine that was a very educated guy said it. We were having a debate about divorce, and he brought it up, and I was like, that's not even true. And unfortunately, we were in a place with no cell phone reception, so I had to wait until we got back to send it to him. I'm like, this is not true. Like, what you're saying is not true. Like, you're repeating it as if you know, but meanwhile, you've done zero research on it. It's a talking point that just gets reiterated over and over again without any research. And it's convenient. It's convenient to reinforce your argument. It's a number. It's a number that deals with a very complex and nuanced debate. And I think that the idea of feminism is, to me, in a lot of ways, very similar to the idea of the men's rights movement. I'm not opposed to rights for anybody. I'm not opposed to anyone. I'm very egalitarian in my ideas about the world, but I am opposed to anybody that likes one gender over the other, because I think that's foolish. Just like I'm opposed to people that only like white people, I'm opposed to people that only like black people. I'm opposed to people that generalize based on an enormous mass of human beings. Like, men are shit, women rule. Girls rule, boys drool. I don't like it the other way either. I don't like the He-Man Women Haters Club. I don't like any ideologies that lump people into these huge groups, because I think it's moron think. I think it's a stupid way of looking at the world.
Yeah, I agree, and I'm the same way. The egalitarian nature is the best. The live and let live nature, to judge people based on their character and the quality of their intelligence or whatever it is you're looking for in them, shouldn't be categorized in these specific ways by sex or gender, by race or religion, by any of those kinds of things. I'm totally with you there.
But I think we both agree that women shouldn't be allowed to vote, right?
That was women have suffraged long enough.
Enough already, girls.
I used to think that joke was so funny. You get murdered for that joke today, but like the women, like instead of suffragettes, like women have suffraged long enough instead of suffering, whatever. And I was like, it's a funny joke. I'd probably that would have ruined my career too on Twitter, but
it didn't ruin your career. It gave you a platform. Honestly, it all balances out. It's as long as you're being attacked for something that's not valid, it all balances out. It just you take a little heat, and then you realize, like, oh, okay, I'm through that.
Yeah, it was scary for a little while.
Was it scary?
I don't know if scary is the right word. It was
uncomfortable.
It was uncomfortable and unsettling, and you really saw where everyone stood. Right. Yeah. So one of the things I was talking with people about was, how sad it was for me that very few people that I knew came to my defense. And I wasn't saying they had to come to my defense and be like, Colin, that joke was fine. Like, if you didn't like the joke, I don't care. It's fine. Right. Jokes fall flat all the time. You know that. You're a comedian. It's hard. Like, I don't do it professionally. I mean, it's impossibly hard to get on the stage and do that kind of stuff. But to me, I was like, hey, is anyone going to say that I'm not a sexist? Is anyone going to stand up that's known me for 10 years and say, like, hey, we don't agree with the joke, but the way you're categorizing this guy, who I know, is not accurate. And I heard that there were some fights behind the scenes with people, and I got a lot of DMs and messages, but very little in terms of public support. And that really hurt me. Like that really, really hurt me. Like and wounded me in a deep way, and ruined friendships like that I had for years. Like,
well, they were probably fake friendships, man, and and people probably felt the need to toe the line. Toe this, I don't want to say party line, but the ideological line. I mean, the dogmatic line. Just if you run into someone who is in any way involved in any sort of a dispute that makes that person appear to be a sexist, you're supposed to pile on.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they did. And the thing that hurt me the most is that I'm not close with a lot of these people, but people that know me, there are people in this industry that are writing that were piling on me or remaining silent, that got freelance work because of me, that maybe even got hired because I was on a hiring committee that pushed for them, all these kinds of things. People I used to take out to lunch when I was senior editor to see how they were doing, if there was anything I can do for them, stuff like that. And everyone's just like, no. I'm not going to come back and help him out now. And I tried to put that good energy out there. I'm not always full of good energy. Sometimes I say negative things or bad things. Sometimes I make mistakes. But when a person comes after your character, and you damn well know that there are a bunch of people around you that know who you are, whether or not they agree with what you said or agree with what you do, but they know who you are, and they know the severity of what people are saying, and they don't say anything, that really wounds a person, and that really fucking hurt.
Do you think that what's going on in a lot of ways when people did not come to your defense is that what you're doing in many ways is making a very complicated and nuanced perspective from a person in your stance? You're kind of you're taking this path outside of the ideology. And by doing so, you sort of challenge a lot of the ways these people have been behaving for a long time. And as soon as you do that, they have to kind of reconsider these ideological boundaries they've set up in their own behavior and thinking and communication. And they don't want to do that. And they don't want to do that. They like to keep things rigid and simple. And they also want to continue to progress in their career. And in order to do that, you have to kind of like have this predetermined pattern that you follow.
I think simple is the key word that you used.
Simple.
Because, yes, there are people out there that cannot comprehend how a person who believes in small government, for instance, will use the same argument that says, the government can't touch my guns. That's consistent with saying the government can't tell a woman what to do with her body.
Right.
That's consistent with the principle that says a government shouldn't even be involved in telling you who you can marry, and a man should be able to marry a man, and a woman should be able to marry a woman. And I would go as far as to say that even a polygamist, totally on the up and up, everyone's in on a relationship, should not be the government's responsibility. They cannot acknowledge that it's the lack of governmental power that gives you that right, in my perspective, when they feel like it's the wielding of government power that ensures those rights. That's not congruent with them. They don't understand they don't understand how we came to the same exact conclusion by going just totally two different directions. And that challenges them, and they don't have the philosophical bounding to figure out how that might be.
No, well, that's the argument that philosophy has to be bound in writing. It has to be bound in some sort of a doctrine. It has to be written down on paper and established and enforced by a government. Well, that's like a big daddy thing. I mean, instead of saying, give the power to the people, let people do whatever they would like to do as long as they're not infringing upon the rights of others, and let's have less and less people dictating what people get to do.
Right, and that to me is liberty.
Yes,
right?
Yeah.
And they look at it, or I don't want to say they, but a lot of people, a lot of progressives or regressives, depending on how you want to look at them, will look at it and be like, well, the government has to ensure these things because these are not natural. These are not natural rights, or these are not things that can be ensured. And I'm like, but in the natural society, in the natural sense, we have to have consistent rights. Mm-hmm. I can't in good faith say like I have the right to wield a gun because the government can't tell me that, even though it's enshrined in the Bill of Rights, but then say like, oh, the government can get involved in your bedroom though. Oh, the government can tap your phones. Oh, the government. I'm like, no, it's either all or nothing. And if that's a philosophy that's too hard for people to wrap their minds around, then I don't know what to say about that. But to me, it's pretty clear and pretty lucid the way I feel my principles are rooted in that philosophy.
Also, I think when people they're seeking this sort of comfort level in life and in their positions, and I don't necessarily think people understand that as soon as you allow the government too much power, you will never get that back. As soon as they have power, as soon as they can take away some of your liberties, those will never get returned. Like one of the rare ones is marijuana. It is a really. Well, I was trying to explain to someone the other day about this. Like, it's incredibly rare that something becomes legal that was illegal as long as marijuana. It's very rare. Like, something has to be just completely undeniably good for it to have gone through all the propaganda, all the bullshit, all the lies, all the governmental regulations, all the people being locked up in jail for life and then still come out on the other side on 2017 and be legal in a bunch of states recreationally, not even just medically.
It's great to see.
But it's fascinating because it's one of the rare instances where liberty lost is regained. And most of the time, it's not. It's just not.
It's an aberration, and that's what people have to be really scared of. And that goes to the point. It's like I don't want to give anything an inch because I am afraid of the consequences of giving anyone an inch. That's why I wouldn't apologize for the joke. That's why I resigned from my company instead of apologizing for the joke.
Well, how could you apologize for that? That's so crazy.
Because it's so stupid. First of all, it's a honeymooners, married with children, all in the family level joke. Something you'd see on the floor of a CBS writer's room.
Yeah.
But the point is that I could have probably apologized and groveled and blah, 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 blah. But I'm like, no, because A, I'm not sorry, so that would be a huge lie. B, like, I have to now really recalibrate the way I go about my business with my partners and with the audience because, I didn't have the protections that I thought I would have when the mistake was made. You know what I mean? Like, and that was what hurt me. So I tried to do what I thought was the most principled and character-driven choice, which is be like, this is best for my partners who don't agree with me. This is best for the audience who might not agree with me. It seems like a lot of them do. And this is the best for just everyone moving forward. I'll have other opportunities and other things that I can do.
Has there been any blowback targeted towards the people that were upset at you?
Yes. And the thing that it's sad to see because it's not I feel like I'm a pretty good natured person and I don't like seeing the rubber band effect going on where people now are suffering because they stood up and stood out or whatever. It's just that, and I don't care about the people that were out to character assassinate me. I'm talking about like, my ex-business partners and stuff. It's just that like, no matter what I say, it will be twisted. I tried to be very magnanimous and like very kind about it when I was on Rogan the second time, and people twisted everything to just be a problem anyway. So I'm like, I'll just remain silent because I'd rather them misconstrue the silence than misconstrue the words. Isn't
that a problem though? If you're not communicating freely and because you're worried about the repercussions?
I'm not worried about the repercussions for me. I'm worried about foisting repercussions on other people that have no control over what I'm saying anyway.
Yeah, but even that, it's like it's not your responsibility as long as you're communicating in an honest way.
Sure.
Like, you're thinking that's sort of the same reason why people didn't come to your support in the first place, because they were worried that if they spoke their mind, they would be targeted. If they said, "Hey, I know that this is going on. I think Colin's a great guy. I don't think he's sexist, and my feeling on him is that it was just a joke." And then they could get targeted, and they chose not to. They chose not to step up. In a lot of ways, you not speaking your mind in a clear way sort of sets that same sort of tone. I think you should be able to speak freely. And I think you should be held responsible for when you say something and it's irresponsible, like it's wrong or it's hurtful or in some ways. And people make mistakes like that all the time. And there's also, we have to take into account that a lot of times people don't realize the consequences of their words, or they say things in a flippant manner, or they're tired, or they're stressed, or things come out that they don't necessarily believe in that way, but especially when it comes to like something like Twitter or some short form, short paragraph sort of a thing. I think it's really important that we be given the opportunity to express ourselves fully, and then the disagreements with that be categorized in an honest way. And what I had the most problem with was not just someone calling you racist, but that everyone was making it out to be this horrible, sexist, evil thing when it's clearly something said in jest. And as soon as you can, and that's my wheelhouse, as soon as you start taking humor and something that people say that's absolutely meant to be just funny and make it as like, oh, this guy just signed an affidavit that women should shut the fuck up because it's better. I mean, that's really the worst case scenario interpretation of what you said.
Yeah, and I think that was the disappointing part of it was, again, it goes back to this point of like, it ignored everything, like my body of work, the things that I actually stood up very loudly for political and social causes many times. There are huge videos I have of my feelings on the Confederate flag, or like how I feel like
what do you think
people,
about the Confederate flag?
I think that you have the right to fly it. I just think it's in terrible taste, and I understand why people are upset about it. And I don't think it should be I don't think the flag of a traitorous country should be instituted in state flags in the United States.
That I think is absolutely valid. Do you think that it's legal? Is it legal to have a Nazi flag? Is it legal to have a swastika?
Yeah, I wouldn't see why it wouldn't be.
I mean, it's legal to have the Confederate flag.
Yeah,
but you just can't have it on the Dukes of Hazzard.
Well, like to me, it's like I'm not talking about the legality of it, because if you
Right.
want to fly a swastika out your house,
You're allowed to.
I think you should
Right.
probably be allowed to do that. I don't think I think you're an absolute idiot for doing that, but that's your right to be an idiot.
Right.
The Confederate flag thing was just a sign for me, because it was this juxtaposition of saying, like, well, we're talking about the legal rights, but actually I'm talking about the taste.
Right.
You know, like to say, like, people don't remember what the CSA was. I don't think a lot of people that even fly that flag know what the hell they're flying. You know?
Right.
This country seceded from the United States. They were traitors.
Or they're Leonard Skinner fans.
Or they're huge Leonard Skinner fans. They're huge, big in Mississippi. They like, But to me, I'm like, we have to have, let's put this in historicity. Let's think about what we're doing here. This country left to protect its slaves, its right to own slaves. Any other interpretation of it is wrong, based on what was going on in the 1850s and leading up to 1860. These states' rights advocates and all that. That's not what it was about.
Economics.
Yeah, it's not what it was about. It wasn't about states' rights. It wasn't about any of those things. It was about your economy would have fallen apart without free labor. And these people left. They caused a gratuitously bloody war. And then they were both Abraham Lincoln and then Andrew Johnson just let them back in. Jefferson Davis, who was the president of the Confederacy, wasn't murdered. He wasn't executed. They were all let back in. And for some reason, because Reconstruction went the way it did into the Ulysses S. Grant kind of era of presidency, people look at it and be like, well, things kind of ended good and they're kind of like brothers again. And I'm like, that's not really the way it was when Jim Crow came up and stuff like that. This fucking flag means something nefarious.
Right.
And you can't, so it's your right to fly it. And if you feel like that's a Southern pride thing, more power to you. I love the South. I think the South's awesome.
I think the South needs another flag.
But yeah, you need to know what this flag means to people.
Yeah.
You guys left. You guys killed hundreds of thousands of people doing it, and you just fly this flag as like the South will rise again. No, it won't.
Don't you think that that's a bad expression? The South will rise again is a terrible expression. But I think that a lot of people look at that flag and it represents what we're calling Southern pride, which is nothing wrong. Nothing wrong with being proud of being from Georgia or wherever the fuck you're from.
Great states down there.
Yeah, but I think the issue is what it means to other people, and whether or not that's valid. I mean, you're not talking about like touchy-feely, people being oversensitive. No, you're talking about a horrible war about slavery. It's like probably one of the worst kinds of wars. Like a war, because we would like to keep people imprisoned and working for free, so we're willing to kill other people over it, to fight for that right. This is essentially what it was.
Right.
So it's, to the people of today, it doesn't seem like that, because they're not living in 1850. They're not in the days when, they would have these massive, like Gettysburg, like they'd have these massive areas where people would be slaughtered. I mean, there's people to this day that still find like Civil War shit where they have these massive battles and they can dig through the ground with metal detectors and they find bullets and guns and badges, and
it's awesome.
It's crazy.
It's great. I mean, I took the idea from Saving Private Ryan, the guy that would take dirt from all the battlefields that they would go to and put it in jars. They only showed it once in the movie, but I used to go to all these battlefields when I was a kid because I was fascinated by it. My parents would bring me, and I would go buy baby food and dump them out, and then go to all the battlefields and put dirt in each of them and put them on.
Dude, that's heavy.
Yeah, I like. Yes,
you did this when you were a kid?
Yeah, like in my teens and early 20s. Yeah.
So you've always been into this?
Yeah, since I was, my earliest memory is of being into politics and history was the Gulf War, which was 90, like kind of lead up to it with Kuwait and stuff in 91. So I was like 6 or 7. I remember Newsday is Long Island's newspaper. I remember just seeing images and kind of maps, and I didn't really understand what was going on. I couldn't even read most of the words. I mean, it's complicated geopolitical stuff they're talking about, but ever since that point, I was very politically focused. And my dad is a staunch like Rockefeller Republican, like a paleocon, like a moderate Republican. In the old North, people out there might know, but like Republicans are a pretty disparate group. Like Republicans in New England or Republicans in New York are very different than Republicans in Texas, but they're both Republicans. And my dad grew up just giving me things to read and feeding that fire and buying me maps and buying me books, and we would listen to talk radio and we would debate things and we would kind of come to these conclusions of different things, and we disagree about a lot of things still to this day, but he's a great man. And ever since then I was really, really interested in it. I knew when I was 4th or 5th grade that I would study history, and I remember in New York we have this thing called the Regents in high school, which are like these tests, these state-run tests that you have to pass to graduate. So like you take your class, but then you have to take your final, but then you have to take a Regents exam, which is the state-run thing. Say like math, whatever. And I remember when I was in 6th grade, my sister Allie, who's 6 years older than me, was taking the U.S. history Regents like a few days from then, and I helped her study. And and like helped. I remember like she didn't know anything she needed to know, and I taught her like what she needed to know just for this very rudimentary test. And that was stuck in my mind because I was like, I have a real passion for this. I really like it. I enjoy it. I don't know everything. I make mistakes sometimes, and I change the way I feel sometimes, but it's always been a real fascinating part.
So now that you've left your company, which was what was it called? Kind of Funny.
Kind of Funny, yeah.
And what was Kind of Funny?
Kind of Funny was the four of us that founded the company were all at IGN in different respects, and we spun off to just start our own YouTube channel about games and nerd culture and stuff like that. Do podcasts, and we found some good success. Most of it crowdfunded on Patreon, and it was a lot of fun. And I enjoyed it, but I felt like I needed to leave because I felt like that was the best for everybody.
Well, once that, I mean, how could you not if they turned on you over that stupid fucking joke?
Yeah, I mean, it's like
not that it's a stupid joke. It was
no,
funny.
it's a bad joke. But I mean,
it's not even that bad.
Well, I appreciate that. That means a lot coming from you. I looked at it.
I
was
just
like,
thought it's stupid. The reaction to it was so fucking stupid.
It was stupid, and I felt like I wish that things went differently. I wish that we had a lot of fights behind the scenes. I won't get into all that. I don't think.
Honestly, I think it's good.
I think it's good too. I don't. I felt like I did what was right for them, and I felt like we would have just come to this impasse again. So I was like, let's just pull the Band-Aid off and get this over with.
Are you going to do something that involves politics now? Because clearly you have a deep passion for this.
Yeah, I started a new YouTube channel that the first video will go out April 3rd. It's called Colin's Last Stand. And
sounds crazy.
It's already funded on Patreon.
$38,000
a month.
Dying for?
Yeah, it's people are
you
equating
love that
it with
expression.
I do, yeah, because I think it's powerful. Like there are things worth dying for. There are things worth risking. Oh, yeah, there it is. So I reached $39,000 a month now.
Damn, son.
And it's gonna fall.
$39,000 a month.
People, it's gonna fall. I'm sure it's gonna fall. People, this
Holy
is the thing.
Shit, dude.
People are talking. People are responding.
Don't try to minimize this. Holy shit, that's a lot of fucking money. $39,000 a month?
Yeah,
you're gonna get $39,000 a month, and you haven't even started it yet.
Yeah, technically, but it's gonna fall back down to the teens probably or something like that, which is fine.
Relax with your humility.
Well,
take it down.
Well, if you scroll here, you'll see on the left side underneath the number. My only stretch goal was to reach $10,000. So my expectations were blown out of the water.
Right.
And what I read into this show is people are just sick of this bullshit. This is them speaking and being like, we need a conduit that's going to get into the history and get into the philosophy and the politics, but also that will stand up and say, like, I'm not sorry for a joke. People have the right to make mistakes. People have the right to express themselves. It goes back to the Confederate flag thing. I might disagree with a person that flies that flag, but I'm not going to go rap on their door and pull it off and call them a racist. I'm just going to shake my head and walk,
Yeah.
because there are other things to worry about. So it's people that like want more liberty-focused, individual-focused kind of things, and that's just people speaking to me, So the number will fall back down after the month, I'm sure, and that's fine.
Just stop saying that. You
But
drive me crazy with this fake humility.
It's not fake. It's not fake humility. I remember
but the number's gonna fall. No, people are gonna like me less.
But my whole thing. It's really not fake humility. It's me saying like, I hear you, and I'll do my very best to do this.
The numbers keep going up. The problem is everybody's going to know what the numbers are, and they're going to go, well, I don't need to give him any money. He's making $39,000 a month.
That's fine.
That's not fine. You should hide that number. Can you hide it?
You can, but I feel like I want to be honest with people. And
Fuck
oh my
them.
god, if you were on Patreon, you'd freaking kill.
You got to get that cash, son.
But yeah, you can hide it. But I want it to be totally transparent. What I keep telling people is, as long as we keep a sustainable level of money, which is way less than what I have now, there will be no baked-in ads, no product placements, none of that. And I want people to know. I want people to be involved in it from its.
So Colin's Last Stand is about politics.
It's going to be, so I want to do 2 videos a week, between 10 and 15 minutes long each, that are scripted and written. And I know how to edit, and so I'm not very good at it. The quality of the videos from a optical perspective, you'll find better quality, but I want the content to be really good. And so I want to just do 2 videos a week, one probably focused on history and one probably focused on politics. So one that's more rooted in philosophy that I'll go research and write. I'm already researching and writing the first one. I don't want to ruin it for anyone yet, but yeah, I think it's gonna be really fun. And then the second, maybe the second video every week will be something about what's happening in the world, and I'll talk to a camera and just be like, this is the way I feel about this. This is maybe why I feel this way. And just some stuff out there, I want to treat people's time with care. I don't have the brand you have. I don't have, people that are religious about listening to everything I do. So I want people to like look forward to saying like, oh, twice a week, Colin might put up a 10-minute video that I can just, when I'm making dinner, just listen to it in the background and then go about my day and maybe learn something or maybe feel a certain way or maybe I disagree and then move on and have something, just be a part of people's lives in that way.
So clearly you put a lot of thought into this and you've thought this through. This is obviously something you're really planning out well.
Yeah, I'm trying. I mean, like that was, I was actually, when the number kept rising, I was horrified. Like at first, because I was like,
what?
Because I was like,
I hate money.
I have that.
Is that what you were like? I hate money.
No,
I hate love.
of course I love money, but it's like the imposter syndrome where you never really know that you're earning it or whatever. And I'm like, I don't want to let anyone down. I only have right now the intro video, which is just me talking to the camera, kind of with what my plan is. I'm trying to really keep people engaged and putting update videos on and letting them know where everything is. But yeah, I was horrified because I'm like, I only have the bandwidth to do 2 videos a week, whether I'm making $15,000 a month or $40,000 a month. And so I put out a video to everyone being like, if this level is sustained, or even a level that's in the 20s or 30s, whatever it is, I have to recalibrate what I'm thinking. Maybe I do hire someone to help me shoot. Maybe I do hire
When you say the
Jamie.
bandwidth, what do you mean by the bandwidth?
Because I don't want people were like, oh, can we get a podcast? Can we do more videos a week and stuff? And I'm like, that's not the vision for the product. I only have enough bandwidth in my mind to
Okay.
write, and it doesn't create time and space, right? The money gives me means in the future to maybe make the product more dynamic or interesting or hire people and do more. But right now, I just want to spend a few months to be like, this is what I'm planning. I want to write these things. I want to put care into them. I want to give you citations. I want to give you further things to read and all those kinds of things. And that takes time. So
are you always like this, like really hyped up and energetic? Do you always have like this much energy? Do you always talk this fast?
I'm a fast talker. That's a New York thing. But
I used to live in New York.
You didn't know a lot of people that talked very fast?
They do, but you're like fucking ramped up.
It's because it's something I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
It's I don't mean to come off as annoying or anything.
No, you're not annoying at all. It's impressive.
Thank you. I just try to. These are the things that I forgot for so long, in a way, because I was writing about games, which I love. I love games. I think they're important. They're an important piece of escape. They're an important piece of art. I think that's all great. But being able to engage with someone like yourself, with someone like Dave Rubin or someone like a Steven Crowder or whoever it might be, I was on Glenn Beck's radio show last week. It brings out an energy in me.
Did he wear a bow tie?
I was.
Did he? Did he wear a bow tie?
I don't know. I was on the phone, so I have no. He could have been naked for all I know. But it brings out an energy in me where I'm like, I can finally engage with people that know what the fuck they're talking about in this particular realm, which I think is so exciting and so interesting. And we can have, we debated. We don't agree on everything. I think that's awesome.
So that's really cool that you found a very big positive out of this. Now you can express yourself more honestly, and you can gravitate towards your real interests.
And yeah, that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to use this as an opportunity for myself, and trying to use it as an opportunity to just carve out a little slice of the internet, however big or small it might be, where we can affect some positive change and like an idea, ideas and learning and free expression and free thought and making mistakes and disagreeing and all that. I think that's all great. I want to use this as an example. I want to get away from the orthodoxy of the gaming industry. It's stifling and it's strangling. And that's why
do you think, let's go back to that, because why do you think it is like that? Why is the gaming industry so hardcore, ideologically left-wing, progressive, like no variations, no room for debate? Why is that?
Well, I think it's portrayed. It's like all of it's funneled through a media that is hyper liberal, right? So it's similar in a way to what's going on with the media in news and politics. These, underneath the surface of the gaming industry, there are plenty of conservatives and libertarians. Do
they hide?
Yeah, they do. A lot of them. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of them talk to me. I mean, I know people that are like heads of studios that feel the way I do. I know people that are in the trenches at QA and doing like very menial things at gaming studios that feel the way I do, and everything in between. I remember a GDC, Game Developer Conference in San Francisco, which happens every spring. 6 or 7 years ago, a guy pulled me aside. This is the first time it ever happened to me, and this is when I was kind of starting to make a name for myself. And he pulled me aside and he's like, "Hey man, I work at X, Y, and Z, and he works on a big game." And he's like, "Keep doing what you're doing. There are a lot of people out there that agree with what you're saying, but they don't dare speak out because they'll get lambasted in some way. Look what happened to me over something so innocuous."
Well, you were saying that there's some pushback about your ideas before this.
Yes.
What did you experience?
Well, so every time I would write a politically driven op-ed, for instance, when I was at IGN, I was senior editor, but I kind of had like editor at large qualities, meaning for people that don't know, editor at large basically, in a way, do whatever they want. Like they'll find something to write about. I used to go away for days at a time and go research things and then write these big 50,000 word articles.
50,000 words?
Yeah, the history of
Who's got that kind of time, dude?
Well, I did. I carved it out.
But what about people reading it? Who's got that kind of time?
It was in 5 parts.
Oh, okay.
The history of Naughty Dog was like my opus. Naughty Dog's this very huge, actually in Santa Monica, a very huge game developer, very talented game developer. I went and talked to 19 people, got about a bunch of primary sources and all these things, and wrote this piece that I really cared about. And so, but when I would write things like the political correctness piece about, let me give you an example. There's a game that was canceled maybe 5 years ago or so. It was pretty late in development, so it's weird to cancel a game when they've already spent a bunch of money on it. It was called 6 Days in Fallujah, and it was a game about, it was a third-person shooter, I think, about the experience of Fallujah in Iraq. Terrible conflict that happened there. And people, even on the right, were getting upset about it, being like, "It's too soon. This is still ongoing. How can you do?" And I wrote a piece being like, "What are you all saying? Like, this is awesome. This is so great that someone wants to tell a story like this and do something like this, and you just get it from all sides. People will be like, it's not sensitive. It's all these kinds of things. And then the girlfriend mode thing I wrote about, where people were like, "Oh, you're a sexist," and blah 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 blah. And I'm like, I'm actually just protecting the sanctity of a man who might have made a mistake. That's it. Instead of destroying him. It goes back to this whole thing of like the
Wait a minute, I lost you there.
I'm sorry. The girlfriend mode, the Borderlands story I told you, where the guy, right. And they were all going after him and going after his job and doing all these things. And I wrote a piece being like, "Hey,
yeah,
like, if this is a farce, guys, like, he made a mistake, maybe, and I don't know that he should."
And it was a soft target, and they just went after it.
Exactly, and it reminds me.
And so you experienced blowback?
Yeah, every time.
From that?
Yeah, every time.
Like, what was the blowback from that? From you defending this guy, saying, "Well, he just really fucked up the way he described things, but it was innocent in that regard."
Well, you lose like social cachet when every time something like this would happen, right? So that's why I say, like, this was the moment. The joke was the moment that they were looking to pounce, really. And I'm not saying that they were calculating everyone's waiting, but they saw an opportunity and they took it. Because over time, you lose respect over people because of your political stances, completely reasonable political stances, I think, where they remember that you said this and you said this and you said this and you said this. So
this wasn't like really, you weren't really having debates with people where you were disagreeing with them. It was simply a matter of reaction to some of the things that you had written, where they were trying to box you into some sort of a conservative group.
Right, and they would call me an alt. Now it's like I'm a Nazi, I'm alt-right, I'm all these things. I'm like, I don't think I have one alt-right. I don't even really know what the alt-right means, but
what is alt-right? Like, what?
To me, it seems like the far fringes, like the Richard Spencers of the world, the neo-Nazis and the white supremacists and the actual nationalists.
Well, as soon as you write alt on something, I feel like it's a message board thing. Like alt-right, it's like it's a Reddit thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So alt-right, alternative right, like, what is it?
I mean, I don't know the.
So maybe you're it.
I hope not. based on their characterization of it.
Well,
but to me, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. Well, how would they define you as being alt-right? What would they say that you have alt-right characteristics?
You can see these, message boards, for instance. A lot of people were very supportive on Reddit and all these kind of places that are a little more known for free thought. But there's this one video game message board in particular that is just insane. And there was a 125 page or so thread about me, 20 posts, or I think it might even be 50 posts a page. And I was reading it, and it hurt some of it that because people are like, first of all, people are telling me I said things I never said.
Like what?
Did things. People like Colin's, against, his name is no taxation. Doesn't even believe that taxes should exist. I often talk about how I really like Ayn Rand and I really like Atlas Shrugged, but I don't consider myself an objectivist. I don't believe that selfishness is necessarily a virtue. I just think she's interesting, and I think some of her ideas are interesting. God forbid I exist somewhere in the gray area.
Right.
But they're like, Colin's an objectivist and he's selfish and blah blah blah, and like, Colin's a Nazi and he's a racist. I think the term a lot of the news was soft racist or soft bigot.
Soft racist.
Being like that he doesn't intentionally or actually overtly say anything, but supports causes that are racist or sexist. These are the kind of character assassinations that were going on. Basically, people on bulletin boards with yarn and maps, like that's how I picture them, like trying to make continuous connections, and it's like these things aren't even things I feel, and things that I said or being taken out of context. I often use the in video games, one of the big things is like, there's a need for diverse casts, diverse protagonists and stuff like that. And I often use the case that I used to use the saying, I don't believe in diversity for diversity's sake. I believe that an artist should tell his story. So if an artist, a writer of a game wants to have an all-white cast and that's what he thinks serves his story, I don't think that makes him a racist.
Right.
If he wants to have an all-Asian cast, I don't think that makes him a racist either. I think that's what he wants to do. And people took that out of context and were calling me a racist and a bigot and all these kinds of things. And it's hurtful because there's no one there no one's defending me, and I can't defend myself because I'll just make it worse. So it was kind of like this hapless kind of situation that I found myself in, and I tried to make the best of it.
I had a debate once about that with a friend who was an Asian actor. And he was talking about the lack of roles for Asians in Hollywood and what a massive issue is, and that he wanted to raise awareness of it. And I was like, man, but we're talking about a creative venture. You're talking about somebody writing a story. Like, I think the the correct way to go about it is to try to figure out how to get your own project through, or someone else who feels very strongly about this trying to get their own project through. But the right way is not for someone to have to compromise their creative vision in order to encompass the full spectrum of races in whatever story they're writing. Like creative story, like if you want to write a story about a small town in Maine, like Stephen King has done so often, you shouldn't have to have 10% Asians in that story. I mean, that's not what creativity is about. It's about there are places and people and where you're going to run into all black folks, or you're going to run into all Norwegian people. I mean, and those stories are just as valid as a story that's fully diverse. And I don't think that necessarily makes anything better. And I also think that when you're talking about that, you're sort of talking about it like there should be a quota. And like Hollywood should recognize the need for these people to be in films and movies, and it's just you're making this politically correct sort of you're passing these judgments on this thing that is all about imagination. I mean, Hollywood essentially, like when you're making a television show or you're making a movie, it's really about an imagination. It's about imagination and vision, and having that vision being entertaining for people. And if you like only want to write about the people that you were in college with, that you shared a dorm room with, you should be allowed to. And if there's a disproportionate amount of people that are doing that happen to be white males, we should probably try to figure out why. But the idea that you have to force people to hire Asian folks or black folks or women or whatever, that seems so crazy to me.
Yeah, serve the story, right?
Yeah.
And to give you a little glimpse, to give you some context with what might be going on in gaming, there was this very popular game series called The Witcher, which is made by a Polish developer called CD Projekt. They're in Warsaw. And it's based on the fusion of like Polish kind of identity with this famous book series that's based on like kind of Polish lore. Like kind of the Lord of the Rings, but in Eastern Europe. And one guy, this cartoon character that works at this website called Polygon, in his review was talking about how there was no diversity there, and everyone's like, dude, it's Poland, and it's based on Poland of yore,
right?
Like, and it's about dragons and like goblins, and there's some white guys, and this is like what you're upset about.
Yeah.
And there's another guy making, and I think he's Slovakian. I don't want to, somewhere in Eastern Europe, making a game called Kingdom Come Deliverance. And it's supposed to be a very realistic look at something like the 14th or 15th century in that area. And again, they're complaining there's no diversity. And he's like, there was no black people in this area in 1500. I'm trying to make a game that's true to the era. That doesn't make him a racist. And this is just the kind of bullshit but you see this in movies, you see this in TV shows. It's not exclusive to gaming, but it's what I've had to deal with for a long time, and I'm just sick of it.
What's the root of it though? What's causing it? Like why do people feel like they have to put a black person in a game about Poland in the 1500s or whatever it was?
I don't. Thankfully, the people that make the games don't care. Like they're like, we're gonna make our game.
Right.
The people that are complaining about it, they're virtue signaling, which is not even a term I even knew what it meant until a few weeks ago. Like I heard people throw that term around. I didn't quite know what it meant. I looked into it. It's and you know what it is. It's the idea that these virtuous people. It's the same people that attacked me for the joke. I have to be virtuous and show that I am against sexism, so I have to attack the man. I have to do all these kinds of things in this need. But what they're saying when they're saying we have to have black people in this game in Eastern Europe in the 1500s, what they're really saying is you're a racist.
Yeah,
that's the subtext, and it goes back to this character assassination and this need to destroy. I often use the example of do you remember when Gawker wrote about Condé Nast CFO and outed him?
No, I don't know what that story is.
So
what's that story about?
It's so on Gawker, this guy wrote this story about the CFO of Condé Nast.
What is that?
Condé Nast is like this big conglomerate that owns a bunch of smaller businesses. They're a pretty big company. I don't know. I think they might even be in publishing and stuff like that.
Okay.
And so they wrote this story, and the entire crux of the story, this guy I think is brother or brother-in-law with Timothy Geithner. So that's his claim to fame, I guess. But he's just a private citizen that works as a CFO of this big corporation. They write this piece that outs him as a gay man, that he's having or trying to have an affair behind his wife's back with this guy. All of this stuff just And I'm like, I read this piece and I'm like, what is the purpose of this? Why? And I'm sure, Jamie, if you want to, you can probably find it.
Why did they write it?
Clicks, you know, and it actually blew up in their faces. People were fucking furious about this because this wasn't, yeah. So there's the thing. It's like they just out this guy for no reason, destroyed his life.
Gawker on Thursday evening helped a disgruntled sex worker extort the chief financial officer at Condé Nast and brother of former Treasury Secretary Kim Geithner. Is that how you say his name?
Tim Geithner, yep.
Jetsoning any semblance of journalistic integrity and likely ruining a man's life in the process.
I'm telling you, you can go jump down the rabbit hole with this, read about this guy. This is such an example of outrage, of not even outrage culture, of just character assassination for the sake of it.
Now I kind of remember this. Now I'm kind of remembering this story. It's unfortunate. There's so many fucking crazy stories.
So, it says he is married and has 3 children, allegedly arranged a night with a male escort on a recent trip to Chicago. When the escort found out who the CFO was, he asked for help with an ongoing housing dispute. In other words, trying to kick it to the government because of his connection with Geithner. Right. The CFO allegedly got spooked and canceled their meeting, though he paid in full for whatever rendezvous they were going to have. In retaliation, the escort went to Gawker, which published the story despite knowing that doing so would play into the extortion attempt. The site also published screenshots of the pair's alleged text message exchange, including several photos. They shook this guy down and ruined him. Ruined him. He's going to have problems with his wife, probably get divorced. Now his kids are going to be in limbo. He's going to lose his job, and he's got to follow him around forever. Why?
Right.
Because he tried to it's not our business if he's cheating on his wife, and it's not our business if he's gay, and it's not our business if he's trying to be with a male escort.
They just saw clickbait.
Yep. And this is what it's all about. It's the same. I would even go further with Gawker, which obviously ended up taking him down with Hulk Hogan. It's like, why? Because he's a famous person, his sex tape, which is going to ruin his friendship, ruin his marriage, ruin all these connections. What kind of pleasure do you get out of that? That goes back to the point I was making about how I wouldn't write stories about a couple of people back in the day because I didn't want to ruin them. That's not what I'm out to do. And I feel like so it all plays into the same culture of character assassination, neo-Puritanism, witch hunting, enjoying the fall of random people.
There's a responsibility that comes with this, that there's almost like a power that has not been earned. The power of whether it's social media or whether it's ability to write blogs about someone like that, or whether it's ability to just to make tweets and just attack someone. That this ability is really very, very new. And the ability to mass publish, like to make a tweet about a guy like you, just decide Colin Moriarty is a piece of shit. I can't believe that joke. Fucking sexist, and then boom, put that out there, and then it gets retweeted over and over again. Like, that people don't necessarily understand the repercussions of these actions. That this is like there's an amount of power that they really haven't earned. There's an amount of power and influence that you have in your ability to express yourself today. That's a really new thing.
I look at it a little differently in the sense that, because I think you're right. I think you're onto something there. But I think it's also the mob mentality that that exposes the fact that, say I was ruined forever, right? And they won, whatever that means. And then people go like, hey, you just ruined that guy. Why did you do that? And they can be like, oh, he did it. Oh, he did it. Oh, he did it. In other words, no one's responsible for it. And when you're in this mob, it's old fashioned witch hunting.
Yeah.
And it's done for strangely puritanical reasons.
Do you think that there's also an inclination to do it because you're worried that it's going to happen to you and you want to attack first? This is almost a thing where people want to take the vision off of themselves, or they want to take the scrutiny off of themselves and point. And when you point it at someone else enough and you keep pointing it at other people, eventually people kind of get it after a while. But like, is it that old expression that if you want to look at like with girls, it was always like the girls who would talk shit about other girls being sluts were always the biggest sluts, right? There's this weird thing about people where if you're going after folks in a lot of those sort of situations, what you're trying to do is take some of the eyes off of you.
I think that's probably a huge element of it. I find it strange because I went about my business in a different way for the same reason, if that makes any sense. So it's like, I don't want to, you're making the argument, which I think is true, that it's like, don't pay attention to the man behind the curtain. Like, there's all this stuff over there. And my whole thing was like, I don't want to be involved in this at all.
I get that. And I believe you that you don't want to be involved in that. And I think that's very virtuous. I think it's very nice that you think the way you do. I think it's important. And I think it's important that you have this ability to express yourself and let people know that is a good way to look at the least amount of conflict that you can go through life with, the better you're going to be off. As long as it's unnecessary conflict, And I think in this situation, this is clearly unnecessary conflict.
Yeah, and that's the whole, and it causes this rigorous kind of atmosphere where we can see it in politics too, where everyone's mad about everything. Like Donald Trump breathes,
Yes.
everyone's mad.
Yeah.
Donald Trump breathed today. The picture that's going around on CNN where it was literally like, is Donald Trump afraid of stairs? Was like the chyron, the lower third, and it's like
Stairs,
and it's
he
like
prefers elevators.
Yeah, he prefers gilded elevators. But
Is that what they're serious? This is a real question.
This is the kind of stuff that's going on. And so when
Is
you say
it STAIR or STARE?
oh no, stairs like that you walk up and down, yeah.
Okay.
And AIRS.
Because it could be like the evil
Yeah,
eye.
he's afraid of stairs. But to me, I'm like, and that's why it goes back. The fact is, and I think this is an important component to maybe making you understand what happened a little bit better because you're not in that ecosystem. But I think you can relate because you're seeing it happen elsewhere. Is that the gaming media is dying. And they're dying because no one really trusts them or cares what they have to say anymore. People, 10-year-olds and 15-year-olds today are not growing up and being like, I wonder what Polygon has to say about the newest game. They go to YouTube and find a guy there that they trust and believe, which is why the only people unanimously pretty much that came out in my defense were YouTubers, because they know that they're the next rung of this evolution of the way we absorb and communicate and absorb information and have news. Meanwhile, these people, to your point, are writing clickbait, trying to stay relevant, but no one really cares what they're saying anyway. So they're in their death throes. This is a way for them to take shots at multiple people at the same time. This is what they did to PewDiePie. This is what they did to other people.
Well, the PewDiePie one was really egregious.
It was egregious, but like again, a lot of that stuff was taken out of context.
Yes.
And a lot of it,
I don't mean PewDiePie was egregious.
Oh, yeah.
I mean the attacks on him.
Oh, yeah, it was terrible. What Wall Street Journal did to him, this is just a sign of the times. These are people fighting, and I really feel this way, and you might disagree, but I feel like a lot of it is these people are fighting for their lives. If I were a person that was writing about...
Wait, hold on. The journalists.
The journalists, yeah.
Yeah.
Like if I were... I'm sorry to interrupt you. If I were... if I had written in the video game industry for 10 years, right? I wrote in the gaming industry for 14 years. But if I was a 10-year industry veteran and I had fewer than 10,000 Twitter followers and I'm writing for a site no one reads and I'm trying my hardest to stay relevant and to do my thing, I'd be pretty mad too if I saw a guy that turns on his camera and speaks whatever he wants and gets the amount of views in 30 minutes that I'll get the entire year.
Why would you be mad?
Because
it has nothing to do with you.
Well, it does. It has a lot to do with you because there's only so much time and space for these people to absorb things, and that's
famine mentality.
They'd rather go to
there's
YouTube.
350 million people in this country alone, and there's many, many more people all over the world. The idea that anybody's views is somehow or another taking away from your views is just straight famine mentality. There's plenty of eyes to go around, and you're showing it right now with your new project.
Sure, but I'm just like.
But I'm just saying, like their thought process sucks.
Yeah, and ostensibly it's actually adding to their destruction because people are looking at this, like the media, for instance, in the political landscape is dying anyway. The decline is happening. Wall Street Journal put up a piece not too long ago saying that per capita viewership on television is actually starting to be outpaced by YouTube. So that's over now, right? So like now, and that's not on video online or video on demand. That's just YouTube. And so people are looking at the situation and actually precipitating it happening quicker because in order to stay relevant, they lie or they write hit pieces.
I think we should talk about what happened with PewDiePie because most people are like, who the fuck is PewDiePie and what happened?
Sure. Do you want me to explain it? Do you want to
please.
Do it?
Go ahead.
So PewDiePie is the biggest YouTuber in the world. He has 55 million subscribers, and he's a millionaire. Just to be clear, I don't really know him very well. I think I've had one or two communiques with him at some point, but I don't know him, so I don't really have a horse in the race. He lives in Europe. He lives in England. I think he's Swedish or something of that nature, but he lives in England. And he has a massive YouTube following. I mean, every video he does will have 10, 12, 15 million views. And you're on YouTube. I'm on YouTube in a much lesser sense. That's a lot of views. And he pushed the boundaries in some ways, in some tasteless ways, as is his right. And the thing that really caught on was that he was using this app or this service called Fiverr, which is this kind of TaskRabbit kind of thing where it's like you can pay people to do whatever you want. And he paid, some of the things he did were otherwise, but he paid these guys in some country to hold up these like death to all Jews signs or something like that as part of a joke. And it's something I think is somewhat tasteless. But he's trying to make a point. Whatever point he was trying to make a point. It was lost on a lot of people. And this combined with some other imagery he had been using, some like kind of fascist or Nazi imagery, and some other things that have been going on over the months. I'm sorry. Did you want to? Oh, I thought you were about to say something. I'm sorry. And so eventually the Wall Street Journal caught wind of this. Wall Street Journal, obviously a very prolific right of center, but still pretty moderate newspaper, and basically went after him and tried to destroy him, and took a lot of things out of context and forced Disney owns a studio that funds him and all these kinds of things, and caused a lot of personal and economic destruction for this man.
It seems like they intentionally took things out of context too, and they distorted the actual intent of what he was trying to do, especially with telling people to not be Nazis. He was like mocking people that were being Nazis, and they used that to say this guy is pretending to be a Nazi.
Right. It was a completely dishonest hit piece in the same vein as the Condé Nast hit piece, is the same vein as the Hulk Hogan hit, is the same. Right. It's these people. They the term punching up. They want to punch up, and they think they're punching up. Wall Street Journal is punching up now on YouTubers, but really caused a lot of.
That's hilarious. Punching up on a YouTuber.
That's the way they look at it.
Isn't that hilarious?
It is.
This guy's a YouTuber. He's a guy by himself. You're punching up to attack him because he's the king, because he's the media elite. I mean, that's the media elite. I mean, it's like an independent reporter attacking the ABC News or something like that.
Exactly. And to me, it was like it showed a lot of cowardice. It showed a lot of half-cocked thinking on the Wall Street Journal's part to think that this wasn't going to blow back on them. And it showed a level, and I hate using this word because I don't think innately it's necessarily a bad thing, because I think it drives you forward, but there's a level of jealousy at play with a lot of these kinds of things that are happening.
That's what you were thinking about before when you were saying that someone who's struggling to get 10,000 views on any story they write is going to look at a guy like this that can do one video where he talks about farts and he makes his 7 million views or something like that.
Yeah, and he makes 15 million a year or whatever.
Mad at him.
Yeah, and they're mad, and they don't understand it. And I get that. I look at some people that are famous, or some people that are have a platform, and I'm like, I don't get this, but I'm not gonna like sit here and like rain on their parade. That's their right. They have an audience. That's totally fine. Maybe look at yourself and why you don't have an audience. Maybe look at yourself and realize that if you've been doing this for so long and you're so proud of that, why isn't anyone listening to you? Could it be you? Instead of looking around for people to assassinate, which is what's basically happening here.
Right.
I find it so distasteful. I find it so destructive. We're at the precipice of a very dangerous time because the trust in institutions, no matter where you are now, is just lost. And a lot of it has to do, and that's what I was saying with media precipitating the fall by not telling the truth, by not doing the right thing. I think the media, in terms of politics, for instance, is really rebounding from the fact that they thought Clinton was going to win, so they thought they can get away with saying and doing anything for that means to an end.
Yeah.
The Donna Brazile thing, for instance, where she was feeding questions to the Clinton campaign, is so incredible. So shows such a level of bias and systemic inherent bias. They thought they were going to get away with all of it. Now no one trusts anyone. So when I see all this stuff, I don't know what's going on with Russia and Trump. For all I know, he could be a fucking Manchurian candidate, But I don't believe a word they say. Like when I read this about Paul Manafort, about Flynn, about blah, 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 I'm like, I don't know. You lied about all this other shit. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
I have to really do my own research. I don't even know who to trust anymore. They did that to themselves, and they precipitated their own downfall. More and more people are going on YouTube to listen to people like you, to listen to people even like Alex Jones, to listen to Dave Rubin, to listen
to... It's a giant problem.
It is a problem because
especially if you're listening to me.
Well, it's a problem because you need people in the trenches that you trust. You need someone in the press room at the White House. You need someone in the AP that is on the wire, that is telling you the truth. But when you can't even trust them anymore, that's a big problem. And that's when people go seek out alternative sources of news and information and entertainment. And that's what's happening, and that's why they're dying.
Yeah, well, in many ways, that big corporate model is ensuring their own demise.
Absolutely. And it's the race for clicks. It's the race for money. It's the race for prominence. It's the race for relevance.
And not honesty.
Yep.
And not transparency, and not a real objective sense of what the truth is and what the actual facts of a story are. That's where journalism is a different thing now, because it's now a entertainment show. It's an entertainment show that also has the news in it. But that's why the women are so hot. That's why the women on Fox News are wearing these tiny little dresses, and they have beautiful legs and heels on, and they're talking about important issues, but they're giving you a little bit of eye candy while they're doing it.
It's so transparent, too. When I see that kind of stuff, I'm like, that was a very attractive woman. Yeah. I'm sure she knows what she's talking about, but I know why she sits at the end of the table.
I like when they're aggressive, too. Look, Megyn Kelly, she's attractive and she's aggressive.
Yeah, she's smart. Yes. That's what makes her sexy.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
But, Yeah, so we're in this weird space. You know it.
Yeah.
We're in this just very bizarre space.
Do you feel like this is like almost an adolescent period in human communication, that we're going through this weird growth period where we have this incredible access to information and the ability to spread it like we have now with social media and with YouTube and all these different things, where anybody can kind of hop in and all of a sudden get a platform like this PewDiePie guy. PewDiePie wasn't a star. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't an actor before this. He was just a guy.
Yep.
And he connected with people and carved out this path for himself. And pretty much anybody can kind of do that now. I mean, it's not easy. It's not. If it was easy, everyone would do it. But it is not insurmountable. And I wonder what the next stage is in terms of the ability to share information. If it's going to change past where it's at now and get to some new level.
Yeah, I think you're right in the sense that the internet specifically had taken off so quickly. The World Wide Web, is only 24 years old. The internet's way older, but the way we communicate with each other now is so different than even Usenet in the 80s or these kind of university communications that they had going on in the 70s where they were sharing things amongst each other. You don't need gatekeepers anymore. There are no gatekeepers. You can go start a YouTube channel now, find an audience, gain thousands of subscribers, make a lot of money, and say what you want. And that's scary to the traditional gatekeepers, and they don't like it. And their fight against it is so transparent, and it's so self-serving. We need a media that we can trust, but I don't think we need the media as it is right now either, because the media we have right now is bloated, dishonest, partisan, politically and motivated, all these things that don't really serve a purpose to educating and informing someone. The days of Cronkite are gone.
Well, doesn't that sort of set the stage for someone to come in and offer a viable alternative?
I hope so.
There you are, Colin Moriarty.
Yeah, that's the idea. Is like just in my own way. Like I don't have these delusions of grandeur that I'm going to make millions of dollars and have this huge reach.
Dude,
I just
you're already at $39,000 a month. You better cut the shit with this humility stuff. I know what you're doing. I know what you're doing. You fuck. Stop.
I'm just trying to say that I didn't have. I left my. I was making good money. I own. Kind of funny. I walked away expecting that I was going to take a pay cut to do what I really wanted to do and try to do the right thing. And it's great that people are responding the way they do. I hope they continue to respond this way because it will allow us to do more of it.
My advice to you, stop being concerned with that and just do the best stuff. Stop being concerned with being humble about all this. And it's definitely going to drop. It's definitely, I'm not going to be famous. I'm not going to be, forget about all that nonsense. Well, it's all like you've shackled yourself. Just
I'm just trying.
Plow forward, young man.
I appreciate.
Plow forward with intent. You've got some good content, man. You're a smart dude.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it so much.
My pleasure, man. And thanks for coming on here, man. It was a good time. I really enjoyed it. We'll do it some more.
Thank you. I really appreciate you, Joe.
And when you do have a thing and it does go live in April, I'd be happy to help you promote it and happy to have you back on again. And it was really awesome. Really enjoyed this.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Colin Moriarty, ladies and gentlemen. We'll be back in a little while with my friend Justin Wren. See you soon. Bye. That was great, dude.
Cool. Thank you. That was a lot of fun. How long did we go?
Awesome.